has a experience of 46 years in teaching and research work in India and abroad. He was a professor of XLRI, Xavier, Newcastle Business School, UK. He's a former director in Calcutta Business School, and also a former principal and dean in Bharati Vidya Bhavan School. Being a Xaverian, Stephen, an alumnus of Delhi School of Economics, he has participated in many international inter-college debate competitions, international conferences and seminars, and he has won more than 72. He won 72 events in all those international conferences and competitions. He's an ideator for the CA Institute debate and has been invited for the international observer as an international observer at Bill Clinton White House Conference in Businesses, Washington, 1995. He is a recipient of Mother Teresa International Award 2014 for education. He has also has worked as a consultant for Ministry of Finance projects on problems of economic forums. He has also worked as a consultant to leading corporates and also did corporates on management and other development research programs. He is a general council member for Niti Aayog. Presently, he is a director general in Bhawanipur Education Society College, Calcutta. He is an independent director in Jardine Henderson Limited and East Pharmaceuticals Private Limited, and also Edge Technician Consulting Limited, Calcutta. Since 2010, he is a member in State Advisory Board on Education for Government of West Bengal, and he is a member in Advisory Board for International Market and Business Community, and also Federation of Small and Medium Industries, West Bengal. He is also a member in Economic Subcommittee, BCCNI, MCCNI, and ASCOChem, and CII. He is also a life member and General Council member for CNRK, an independent think body of researchers on international development. So, I would like to just request everyone to give applause to Mr. Dr. Suman Mukerjee.
Welcome, sir. Thank you, Pallavi. I would like now request our member CA Girdhari Sharma ji to kindly introduce our chairperson CA K.K.Chhaparia ji. Girdhari ji, kindly unmute yourself.
Well, I welcome all the participants. Mr. Chhaparia is known to all of us. He is our past president of the Huge. He is qualified chartered accountant, but in practice since last 25 years. He is a regular faculty for the income tax officers. He has given trainings to more than 3,000 officers in Calcutta and Nagpur of National Academy of Direct Tax. He is regular contributor in the papers, and he is guiding us in the seminars and guiding what is the latest developments of the departments. We welcome Mr. Chhaparia.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Now I would request CA K.K.Chhaparia ji, the chairman of the session, to kindly give a brief overview and start the proceedings, sir.
Thank you, Naveen. Naveen Khemka, convener. Saroj Swaika, deputy convener. Dr. Suman Kumar Mukerjee, K.R.Sekar and Rakesh Gupta in absentia, past presidents of Views Exchange, and my dear professional colleagues. Good afternoon. At the outset, let me thank Views Exchange for organizing this program and giving me an opportunity to be a chairperson in this meeting. Since Dr. Mukerjee is there, I was just wondering what this budget, I mean, why the market is reacting so favorably. Because uh, because when I was reading today's Economic Times, the Economic Times said that as if FM is saying that we spent and spent. How else did deficit reach 9.5%? Then again, our Honorable Prime Minister FM says that the hopes ride on big expectation. Spend like a Sitharaman. Sir, the total expenditures is around 34.50 lakhs crores, and there is a revenue deficit of 14.55 lakhs crores. If you can give a light to us with such a huge deficit, how we are thinking of, I mean, why the market is reacting and so favorably, and what is there in the FM's mind? We as a chartered accountant and accountants, we are not able to understand this aspect of the things. What exactly, how the market is reacting so favorably. Coming to the tax reforms, friends, we have no tax reforms, no tax concessions announced in this finance bill, accepting some extension of the due dates, for example, 80 IBA and some other benefits for 54 GB, 80 IC, some reductions which were already there that has been extended by a year or so. So other than that, no new tax concessions has come, but then it was widely expected that new tax concessions will not come, because this year what has happened, right from 24th March 2020, when the Honorable FM announced the taxation ordinance, then there was a press release on 13th May 2020, which was a Atmanirbhar package. Thereafter, we had a tax reforms announced on 13th August 2020. Then taxation, relaxation, and amendment of certain provisions introduced on 18th September 2020. Then we again had a notification dated 29th October 2020. So we had a series of notifications, ordinances, etc. this year, which have been given us some sort of a concessions and reliefs. So it was widely expected that perhaps nothing new will come up as a concessional measure for the taxation fraternity. But then coming to the taxation aspect, though in the FMC speech, I find that there are only 32 proposals for the tax. But when I was reading the finance bill, I found that 79 clauses are there with respect to direct tax, and 35 clauses are there with respect to indirect tax. And friends, let me tell you, I have been practicing in direct tax, and the reforms we have seen in the last 1 year, right from faceless scrutiny to faceless appeals, and then faceless penalty. And then presently in the present finance bill, we have a whole concept of reopening of assessment being changed. I mean, earlier it was 6 years, now it is 3 years, vis-a-vis 10 years. Earlier, we used to advise our client that 7 saal ho gaya to books pad do. Now, question is what the client will understand, whether it is 3 years and 7 years. Today morning, when I was in the investigation wing, I found that suddenly the investigation wing has started working to find out those cases where the escapement of income is less than 50 lakhs in last 4 to 6 years. So there, I mean, there is a far-reaching implications with respect to amendments of reopening of cases. Again, those who are practicing in the Income Tax Settlement Commission, suddenly we find that from the first day of Feb 2021, the Settlement Commission is no longer there, and that has been replaced by interim board, and the scheme is yet to be announced. Coming to search cases again, earlier we had a section 158 BC, etc. Block assessment concept was there. Then 153A came, which said that the search assessment will be 1 year plus 6 years preceding the year of search. Again, we find that in the current finance bill, the whole concept of search assessment has changed, and 153A, 153B, etc. has gone away from 1/4/2021. In other words, for all searches which are conducted after, which are initiated after 1/4/2021, there will not be any 153A assessments that will be covered under 148 cumulatively with the reopening of cases. We have, I mean, when I was reading, there are lot many implications like goodwill written off. like a partner's revaluation reserves. So, I mean, we have two eminent direct tax speakers who will be discussing the fine prints of this budget. But then I find here that we have Dr. Mukerjee there, and we have to understand the macro aspect of the budget. First of all, we chartered accountants are quite weak on that aspect. And who else than Dr. Mukerjee can be there who can guide us on the macro aspect of the budget? So, sir, without wasting any further time, I would request you to enlighten us on the subject. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to all friends and fellow countrymen. It's a great day because we are coming fresh from the budget which was presented by the finance minister yesterday. But more than that, this is the first time in the last 4 years we've seen the Sensex actually improve over the day instead of dropping. And that's the query that perhaps your president had on how is this happening when the deficits have widened and fiscal deficits have mounted. See, you have to realize there are two things which are happening. One is, of course, how did we spend the money? What is the fiscal deficit about? But more than that, what is the thrust area that we are going into? I must say, this budget has been very simple. It has actually led to a lot of heart burning of common people because they didn't get any relief or change in tax slab. But that's one way of looking at it. The better way of looking at it is thank God nothing happened, although the growth rate fell by 24%. So everybody with senses should have actually be expecting that we would have been taxed heavily or made to pay heavily, and that didn't happen. And you're absolutely right. Whereas fiscal deficits have mounted, it's gone up from April, the target figure was about 35% of what we had targeted for first year. And we've said goodbye to all our fiscal monetary regulation funds, FRB. The fact remains that the fiscal deficit fact has been steadily given way. You know, we were looking at targeting it for 3% when Arun Jaitley was there. But now we are happy to even say that it's about 7%. In fact, it's much more than that. If you look at the figures or read between the figures. And till about another 5 years or so, you don't expect this to really change because it's going to get worse and worse over time. In fact, if I look at the FRMB Act, it was suggested to be 3% by 2000 from at 2003 by this time, which is March. But now 2020, 21, it's going to be 5.5, 23, 24, it's going to be 5%, 24, 25, it's 4%. So we've actually said goodbye to that target of fiscal prudency. Why did this happen? I don't think we can blame the government for that. The entire world sort of collapsed with what I call the Chinese virus. And the Chinese have been an enigma to the whole world, and we are no different. Even their virus is different. Never in the history of the world has the whole world been so badly damaged. Not the Spanish flu, not the First World War, not the Second World War, not the 2008 crisis. This crisis has hit almost every part of the world, and it has sunk every country. So much so that countries like USA had to bring in stimulus of 11%, Japan 14, 10, 10.4%, China 5.5%, Brazil 8%, Russia 6.5%, India 4.1%. We couldn't afford to bring in more stimulus. We contracted our economy to the maximum. USA has contracted by 3.4. It's a huge country. So contraction of that is several times more than what India has actually suffered, but it's only 3.4%. Japan 5%, China 2.3%, Brazil 4.5%, Russia 3.6%, India 8%. Huge contraction. then the question arises, why the buoyancy? And I'll tell you that depends on the philosophy. Indians are always proud about the Hindu culture and what we profess in our Gita. And for the first time, the government has actually risen to speaking in very plain terms that what we had embarked in 1990 as an LPG policy, this budget without a doubt says they are moving into the LPG era. You know, after almost 30 years from 1990, we still have the illusion of belief in public sector. We still believe that a sick unit has to be nurtured because it belongs to the government. We still believe that agriculture has to be left free and that should not be the tapping sector. And this government happily has touched the very factors that involve large number of people. In agriculture, we have more than 50, possibly 60% of the people drawing their livelihood. So if the LPG didn't make sense to them, then 60% of the people were not benefiting from this change. India had pushed itself up to the first three positions only because we had made gestures of privatization and liberalization and globalization. And in each of these scores, we were actually going back. We was trying to regulate. We were trying to keep the public sector floating. We were trying to, the share in global market was falling. For the first time with the farm bills comes the knowledge of LPG in agriculture. What was being said, where we are saying that let private sector come into agriculture. Was this a new thinking? No, not at all. In 1978, the sixth plan had this document. The sixth plan said a dog cannot, a tail cannot wag a dog. You need a dog to wag a tail. So the larger sector needs to be activized. And if you activize it and not keep it as a reserve forest for the poor and the downtrodden, and use that as the sector to revolutionize, you are actually creating the best opportunity for industry to grow. Not the industry you know, but the industry that would actually translate into greater growth desires. And this knowledge comes way back in 1960s when Kuznets, who won the second Nobel Prize, was writing on what creates economic growth. And he said the capacity of a sector to contribute to economic development does not depend on itself. It depends on the other sector. And he gave the arithmetic. If you want 5%, and he obviously had India in mind, and your agriculture or your rural sector is 75% of the economy, then how much would you need to have a growth in the industry for you to have a 5% growth? And he said that if your agriculture grows at 2%, guess what? Your industry needs to grow at 42%. However, if agriculture grows at 4%, industry needs to grow at 8%. This year, agriculture grew around 3.5%, nearly 4%. This year, agriculture has generated the largest ever surplus in spite of COVID. And if India is still standing on its two legs, it's because our farmers didn't let us down. Our farmers have created 295 million tons of food grains. But however, we are unable to keep the stock. Even Food Corporation of India officials are unable to keep that stock. Or they are purposely saying, our godowns are full. So the same farmer who's assured of a minimum support price takes that to a mandi where the araddas charge a commission and sell it at a price lower than the MSP. And when that happens, the Food Corporation member or the person in charge walks to that mandi, buys it at a lower price, comes and stores that up in his FCI and charges the price which is professed to be there. So he's also making money. Have you ever wondered why vegetables, and wheat is not the only item, if why vegetables, which are giving a farmer a return of, let's say, 3 to 4 rupees a kg, whether it's brinjal or bhindis or potatoes, are being sold in the market at 45 rupees and 50 rupees and 60 rupees. So where's the profit going? Who's taking away the profit? So if tomorrow we say we liberalize agriculture and we give you the chance to sell it at ENAM, and the world is your market, the whole country is your market, then we need to have pickup vendors who will pick it up and sell it there, like you have your Amazon and the other nets, and the farmer will get a far better deal. We need to connect the farmer with the consumer. And it is not shocking the farmers have agitated, because there are vested interests. There are people who are charging a commission for keeping the food at the mandis. It's not surprising that they've been hard hit, because they have large acres of land which are kept as mandis, and they benefit. Is the poor marginal farmers, which is 85% of the farmers, who were not drawing the benefit of this. If the farmers bill has one lacuna, it has not given us a way to say how the 85% of the farmers which have small holdings can get their act together. And that should be the cooperative movement. That's the only story which the farmers bill didn't address. But it's already said that I'm liberalizing. It's not an essential commodity. You can sell it in any way you want, and only under extreme times of scarcity, harvest failures, famine kind of situation, shall we bring in the public distribution system. Otherwise, distribute it. Now, if you say that, what happens? Agriculture becomes an opportunity for industry, and industries will rush in there. What is it that you won't get? In the sixth plan, it shows that if agriculture grows at 4%, industry can actually very easily have an 8% growth rate. You need more packaging, you need more electricity, you need more transport, you need more communication, you need more digitalization, you need more financing, you need more threshing, you need more food processing. So for heaven's sake, what is the industry you don't need? You can use, and if you go to Scotland, you'll find that even in a place like Inverness, they have the Airbnb system where a small farmer or a small hutman will release one of the rooms and keep a bed and breakfast facility for a guest to see the countryside. So in the days of COVID, when tourism is collapsing, we can look at healthcare penetrating rural India. We can look at education through the mobile industry penetrating rural India. We can look at tourism penetrating rural India. We can look at more arts and more music and everything hitting rural India. And that's big business. You don't have to look too far off. Look at Australia. It's a developed country because it is an agro-based country based on integrated rural development. Huge opportunities for industry and huge possibilities for growth in every sector. Look at America. The difference between America and Russia, which is equally strong militarily, is that Russia needs food and wheat, and therefore goes in for wheat trade deals with India. But America has enough wheat, and only based on the food has it been able to urbanize and create the industrial state. What we didn't do for 70 years, this government has decided formally to announce privatization is our package. I'm amazed and aghast at how the opposition is saying this is a sellout of the country. I was privy to writing the manifesto for the Congress party in West Bengal, the election before last, when FDI and retail business was being talked of. And whereas the local government was going hammer and tongs against FDI investment, I told them, and I'm repeating it today, when does capital have a flag? You only bring in capital because that's Lakshmi to you, to help you grow. And if it's flying away, people say, oh, the profits will be taken away from the country. I think that tells you the whole issue. That means you're saying first make profits. So that questions, is your public sector making profits? And all the sick public sector which is not making adequate profits or making losses, which are sick children, they should be handed over to the sector which can make profits. Banking, restaurant business, or for that matter, any business, is a very profitable business abroad. How is it that your PSUs make losses? And that too in major industries. It's because of the casualness with which you work. So the government has no business to be in business. The government's business is only to govern and see that it's tactfully run. So for once, privatization is being talked of, and I'm amazed that people in opposition have started redoing what happened in 1991. We had the Communist Party here decrying computerization, saying computerization would make us lose jobs. Today, the electronic world is actually driven by technology. And India has not been able to awaken that technological process, because the best of the Indians go abroad, and the entire software industry abroad is actually run by Indians. So if you have your Indians going abroad and settling there and sending back their wares in form of Microsoft and Google and what have you, those industries, the hardware, India could not develop because you did not allow private sector to flourish. You were still looking at public sector. So that answers that very uneasy question. When deficits are mounting in such a big way, how is it that your economy and the people at large are happy? And that's primarily because there is intent in our purpose. For once, we are now saying, get into business and the government will support you. And government is saying, let me get out of where I should not belong. And let foreign capital come in there. Let there be more investment in insurance companies. Who loses? Not the people. The people get better deals. If you look at the rate and the compensation you get, if you look at this normal medical insurance policy, there's so many caps. You can't get into costly rooms. You can't have an OT cost more than this. So many caps. If you look at, in comparison, in the private sector insurance company, they just cover you and say, okay, spend this much. If you're sick, you have to be genuinely sick for that. So the quality of insurance covers, profits increase, and you grow faster and faster. Why should you restrict it to one sector? You've seen that happen in the car industry, in the automobiles. Has an improvement from ambassadors to where the automobile industry today improved the state of welfare. So who told you privatization harms us? Profits are to be made to be rechannelized. So this belief that public sector is a holy cow, it's a Narayan or a Shiva for us that can't be touched, is a myth. And I'm happy that's being hit at. It took us years. It's taken 30 years after 1990 to believe it, but it's happened. And it's happening even in agriculture. Question arises, where's the money coming from? That's where the catch is. The catch is, we have borrowed enormously. In 1978, when Raj Krishna thought about a plan which was 5 times higher than the previous plan. In fact, the 5th plan was 37,000 crores. Raj Krishna's plan was 1 lakh, and Professor Sukumar Chakraborty, who followed Raj Krishna, was 1,80,000 crores. 6 times larger. So the question is, what would you do? Print money? Borrow from abroad? Why are you going to get this money from? Tax the people? And he said, no, I'm going to do something which will not increase foreign aid, which will not increase taxation, which will not lead to printing of money, but I'll borrow from people. And the borrowings of the government has gone up enormously. Let's compare the last 2 years. Last year, of the total 1 rupee, borrowing was only 20% and interest payment was 18%. So whatever we borrowed, we actually paid off as interest. This year, the borrowing has gone up to 36%. More than 1/3 of our resources are coming from borrowed funds. How much are we paying an interest? Nearly half of it, 20. Interest payments has gone up by 2%. That explains where is the capital infusion coming from. But it does not tell you the story. Like any funding, the problem is when we have to repay the loan. When we have to repay the loan, which is the break-even point, will come about 5 to 7 years later. So if we have not been able to put a house in order, we will see a collapsed economy 7 years down. So we have not funded ourselves by taxing people more, by printing notes. We have not been we are talking about infusing and giving credits. The banks are loaded with funds, but there are no takers. So we borrowed. And borrowing is a good way for the stock market to pick up, which is why when there is 24% crash in the market, GDP has fallen and the economy has collapsed by 8%, you find strangely the stock market doing very well, the equity market doing very well. And the stock market census is again resounding happily to this. The second thing that we are investing in is a new venture, and that's health and well-being. Notionally, the expenditure on health well-being has gone up 137%. It was 94,000 crores, and now it's gone up 2,23 lakh crores, 2.2 lakh 23 lakh crores, which is a 137% increase. But if I put 2.2 lakh over the GDP, which is 22.3 lakhs, is just a 1% increase. But a sector which we neglected so long and now perforce we have to take care of, thanks to COVID. COVID has given us two lessons. One is it's made pharmaceutical industries and the vaccine industry a profitable venture. The second, for once we are finding Indians have learned to work. Online classes, online jobs. I noticed my sons work till 12 o'clock at night to justify their existence. As long as you had physical classes and you were going to offices, you know the story in government offices. People hardly worked for 2 hours. They chatted for 4 hours. They had lunch for 2 hours and they went out of office for 2 hours. Then they came back, picked up their coats and came back home. That was a normal officer's job. Now, in private sector, you can't do that. People are working till 12. So once India has learned how to work, because there's a question of accountability. Indians have realized that we have to justify our salary. Because if the going's not good, our salaries will be cut, our fringes will go, and forms of expenditure like going partying and clubbing and outing, they've all stopped. So the only thing you can do is work from your home, and that has immediately enhanced productivity levels. How else do you explain a shrinkage of the economy of 7.7% shooting up to 11%? The V of the growth, a shoot up of that. Now, how big is that V? That's a question mark. Whether the 11% will actually be there, but the fact is we are rebounding. In spite of the economy collapsing, there's such a shrinkage. How are we having a revival of the economy of sorts whatsoever? A, because of agriculture, and B, because of the Atmanirbhar project, MSME in attachment with the large. What is missing? What is missing is we have not thought about how to earn foreign exchange. And that can't come without foreign capital infusion. To put it in very simple words, when India began planning in 1951, 1 rupee was equal to $1. If you go back a century from today, 1913, $13 was equivalent to 1 rupee. Unbelievable. You'll have to pinch yourself to say that. 1 rupee equals $13. Today, 74 rupees to a dollar. So that tells you where we've slipped. We've slipped in earning foreign exchange, and foreign exchange is an extremely important input in our development plans. Yet, foreign exchange reserves have gone up. It has gone up to $500 billion. Never before in the history of India have you had such foreign assets. Question is, why is the government not using this resource and plunging it in? Of course it is. It's taking loans. But the better style would be to encourage foreign capital, FDI. It would allow, if the foreign capital holdings is pushed into all sectors, which is privatization, increase your holdings, there will be a resurrection of the economy. So simple logic. The two most important flanks of the country have started firing. Indian growth has started making sense because we are looking at agriculture as an industry. We are looking at fisheries. We are looking at animal husbandry. We are looking at beef production. We are looking at medicinal plants. We are looking at horticulture. We are looking at grain processing. We are looking at fruit processing. And these are huge opportunities for industry. We are looking at communication. We are looking at marketing. The second is 60% of our industries is small scale, and MSME is now at the center of stage. They are working as ancillaries. What do we need to do? Extend this model to the international world. Make agriculture an industry and let them start exporting their wares. And herein comes the problem of why minimum support price is not the real strategy. It was a good strategy when farmers were dying and there were starvation deaths. If the former form of planning was right, then one needs to explain why people died, committed suicide. Why did they commit suicide? So what we need to do now, very, very simply, is to orient the agricultural sector, the rural sector, to the international market, for which we need to have infusion of foreign capital, whether be it marketing, production, contract farming. We need to bring that in, and also in terms of processed foods. Similarly, we need to think in terms of ancillarizing our small and medium enterprises, because the small and medium enterprises, instead of producing a whole product and trying to sell it, let's say a shirt, trying to sell it abroad, which Bangladesh is able to do. Bangladesh is having an 8% world trade. We are not. Why? Because they've stressed on process exports, they've stressed on quality. And that requires international intelligence, international property rights, international collaborations. So if all our processes can be put to right use with foreign capital infusion, I think we'll be heading northwards, we'll be going in the right direction. There is a pitfall. The pitfall is what happens to consumption. Demand, the typical Keynesian line is C plus I plus G plus X minus M gives you aggregate injections. C can go up only if we allow more expenditure to the middle classes. I, for one, would have expected the government to give a relaxation on 80C, 80D. I'm personally aggrieved that the government has thought about the senior citizens and said that you don't have to file a return if you have an income above only through pensions and interest earnings. But if you have other sources of income, you have to do that. If that's the logic, that could have actually been extended to age 65. You don't have to wait till 75. It's a very small number. How many people live 75 and above, and how much of tax do you collect in any case? So it's more a lip service. But if actually they wanted to do a service to the elderly people, I would have expected the government to say no GST for medical insurance for anybody, including the senior citizens. Medical insurance, or for that matter, medical cover, is something the government is duty bound to give to its people. Now, if you do that protection on your own, spend your money for an insurance company, why tax it? Why the GST there? Having said that, please note the GST has gone up to 1 trillion rupees for the last 3 months, which means the center is now going to 50% of that will devolve to states. The states will have 50% more income, and small scale industries will have better payment structures because GST is picked up. And if GST has picked up, then the state share can rightfully be reduced. Otherwise, it's likely to be used for non-economic reasons, for political reasons. And very subtly, the government has said, instead of 42% share, I'm reducing it to 41%, and 1% is going to Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir for its evolution and its development. Excuse me for this. I'll just shut this out. So that's an extremely important development that we need to take care of. And on that issue, let me say what are the other things we could be looking at. Firstly, the budget figures, I think, are a bit fudged. We are talking about receipts and expenditure, and we are looking at perhaps we'll be able to keep our deficits within 6.6%, but I feel it's going to be worse than that. It's going to be more than 9.9%, as the government has already declared 9%. I think it's going to be about 12%. Why? Why do I say so? The official accounts that we've received is still December. The budget is being presented in February. So the financial year ends 3 months later. How do we get that 5 lakh extra, which is a 42% extra on our revenue expenses, when our expenditure target is going to be 34% extra in a month where we have no calculation? It's just a projection. We are projecting that expenditure will be 34.5 lakhs. But till December, we've been able to collect, we have actually spent only 22 lakh crores. So there is a gap of 11 lakh crores in 3 months, which we don't know. We think it'll be there, which is 34% more in 3 months. And again, in terms of, that's not so bad, I can spend that. But to believe that our receipts, which is 16 lakhs until December, is 11 lakh crores, we will get 5 lakh crores more, is a 44% increase in revenue, which I don't think is happening. So even if it increases 34%, another 12% means your fiscal deficit will not be as low as 9.4%, but or 9.6, it's going to be clearly 11 to 12%. That's my personal idea of what is the fudge in the budget. I'm personally not happy why the budget has been presented on 1st of February, when it used to be presented, if you remember, 2 years back, on 1st of March. Now it should actually be presented on 1st of March, and that brings us closer to greater estimates of what's really happening in the country. So I'm not happy with the deficit that has been shown, but I don't mind the deficits being as large as 12. This is an exceptional year, and we can actually have an excess of expenditure. I've told you that other countries have gone in for fiscal stimulation. And having said that, how much have we actually invested in rural India? Of all the penetration we've done, it's actually more on supply side, making loans available. We have not actually spent on giving cash incentives or direct spending. I think if that had been done, and if 60% of the people are getting only 1.5 lakh crores or thereabouts, when you're actually spending 20 lakh crores, that's not adequate amount of development for agriculture. A lot more could have been done. But that's your 60% of the people. So whatever has happened in the right direction, but inadequately. I would rather believe more should have happened. And I would have been happy if 10 lakh crores was invested in agriculture as a penetration, as a help development help. Some of it is cash. Some people suggest that we should give cash to the poor. I'm not of the opinion we should, because after all, it's the taxpayers' money. And they say if you give that money, the consumption will go up, demand will go up, and that will be a fillip to the economy. I don't believe that's so, because the poor people consume wage goods, which by Angel's law means food and clothing and shelter. They don't go in for luxury spending. They're not going to spend on what creates the white goods. And if your industry is languishing, we need to really give fillip to that part of consumption. So don't think consumption will go up if I give more money to the poor. Consumption for food items will go up if I give more money to the poor. But consumption, if it has to go up, it has to go up in all classes, which means income has to go up, profits has to go up, distribution has to go up, and people should enhance their productivity, earn more. So if opportunities and market shares go up, that can only go up if opportunities of investment goes up. And that is where I think the government is rightly parked on the right lane, very, very transparently. The second, and that's a very worrying point, is the NPAs has again surged up. And the government's policy of trying to create a certain bank to take away the NPAs so that you have breathing space for PSUs and even privatize some PSUs, I think is a step in the right direction. It's very simple when you don't tinker with taxes and try to give baits and softs to people, because that confuses people. You expect and you think that's a good thing, but I already said it, thank heavens, we have not been taxed more. We have been kept with the same kind of tax rate that happened before. And we are looking at huge capital expenditure in infrastructure. And that's going to take place, about 3/4 of our capital expenditure will be on infrastructure, which is very labor intensive. It'll create jobs. It'll help communication. It'll help greater linkages. And that will be the basic ballpark of saying why the economy is optimistic, why the economy is going to grow. So to repeat, agriculture, MSME, infrastructure, we can't go wrong. The budget is headed northwards. There are problems, there are glitches. We need to look at the glitches and address those issues. But all in all, I think it's a very good budget, because we are actually directing our budget in a certain way. Thank God the elections are not around the corner. You'll get the SOPs in a couple of years. But the issue is, if you've taken money from borrowings, we'll have to learn to repay it exactly in 5 years' time. So the real story of what we didn't do will be unfolded exactly 5 years from now. And revenue collection has to pick up. If it is not picking up, then we need more debts, or we need, perforce, more infusion of foreign capital, which is why FDI is most welcome. And Lakshmi has no color. Let it come, translate it to action, let them come and take the country forward. I mean, why are we reluctant to receive capital? That's a salvation for all people. Employment, productivity, technology, reach, global reach. I think I would like to stop at that so that you can ask me questions based on macro policies. I would like to discuss a few more issues on direct and indirect taxes, but that can be taken up by experts.
Thank you, Dr. Mukerjee. Within such a short time, sir, you have given a wonderful perspective of economic perspective of budget. I mean, if I can summarize some of the points what you could have spoken. I mean, first you told that the Indian economy has contracted more than vis-a-vis if we compare with the other countries. And that's the reason there is a huge spending. And perhaps because of huge spending, the market is reviving. Second, you told that uh, till last year, we were meeting the revenue deficit by way of fresh borrowings. But this year, whatever is the interest payments, till last year, whatever was the interest payments, that was met by fresh borrowings. This was happening till last year. But this has gone some change this year. This year, we are borrowing more than what the interest payments to us is concerned. So it is double the borrowings than the vis-a-vis the interest payments made on a macro level. Then he further highlighted the fact that the privatization of PSU is a welcome move, as this will enable the better functioning of the PSU and reduce the government funding of the deficits. It was further pointed out by him that the changes in the farm laws, agricultural laws, is a welcome move, accepting some changes wherein small farmers representing 85% of the agricultural sector should have given an opportunity of better realization through some cooperative movement. I mean, then coming to the revenue deficit, sir has made the figures very simple and said that against the budgeted estimates, which was given at the time of last year budget of 9 lakhs, the budgeted estimates of last year, it was expected that the revenue deficit would be around 6 lakhs crores, which has actually turned out to be around 15 lakhs crores, the revenue deficit. So there is an increase in the revenue deficit. The revised budgeted estimates shows that there will be a revenue deficit of around 15 lakhs crores vis-a-vis what was conceived a year back. And that 9 lakhs increase in the revenue deficit has been owing to the two parts. First part is the more spending, and second part is the less realization by way of revenue income. And it was pointed out by him that, okay, whatever is the revised estimates of the expenditure is concerned, that is more or less, maybe more or less whatever has been perceived in the revised estimates. But then he pointed out that whatever is the revised budgeted estimates talk about the revenue collections or the revenue receipts, that may not be achieved because the quantum jump which has been shown for the next couple of months may not actually be achieved. Sir, in the short time given to you, you have wonderfully dealt with all the aspects, right from the total economic perspective. Then you also touched upon the that in the taxation things you should have, they could have made some changes in the 80C, 80D, and then the senior citizen also, the age of 75 years can be reduced to 65 years, etc., etc. Sir, we really thank you again for coming to this forum and giving us a wonderful perspective of the macro aspect, economic perspective of the budget. With this, let me see what questions are being there. Navin, could you help me out if there is any question for sir?
I don't think any of the members have asked any question as of now, but I have personally have one question. We see that the government is selling its stake in the PSUs which are earning good, but we have learned that government is announcing some stake sale in LICs and other things also. So as Mr. Mukerjee said that since we are into deficits, so is it the right time that the government is selling this some of the PSU, some stake of the PSU, so that this revenue deficits can be catered up?
You see, when you can't raise revenue by taxing because your economy is now in the negative zone, and I'm happy that they've not taxed burdened the people. A lot of people, particularly the left, have said, "Why not tax the rich?" But that's the goose that lays golden eggs. They are the ones that should be encouraged to invest. So whatever little you are accruing on one side, you should actually encourage and tap them, make things simpler, do ease of doing business, and encourage them to come into productive play. The only other source is borrowings or FDI. So if I'm going to tax people, then it has to be borrowed. I can't borrow anymore. More than 30%, one third of our resources are coming from borrowings. So the only source left is foreign sources. Let them come in. If they are parking their funds here, and your foreign exchange holdings have gone up to $500 billion, encourage them to spend in your country. It's happened in Thailand. It's happened in Singapore. It's happened in every other country, including China, Why are we so hesitant to get foreign capital into our country? Because we've had a past where they exploited us. Now, you're in your control of governance to create laws to see that they don't exploit your people, but give them the opportunity to produce, to make money and grow within the country. They can only take back as dividend after they've created profits, and profits means they'll have to pay corporate taxes. So I don't see why this hesitance to say capital. If I can take loan from IMF and obey very strict strictures, why don't I encourage private players to come in and invest in every sector of our economy?
Thank you, sir. There's no more question. I think we can end up the session, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure being with you because I have to rush to another one. I'll join you
On
again.
behalf of Views Exchange and all other members, on behalf of K.K.Chhaparia ji and other members who are present, I thank you, sir, for spending time and educating us with the macroeconomic of this budget. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We have our next session speaker, Mr. K.R.Sekar from Bangalore. I welcome you, sir. Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, you are muted, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Fine, sir. Now, I would request our Deputy Convener Saroj Swaipaji to kindly introduce K.R.Sekar in front of the August House, and then we can hand over the session to Chhaparia ji.
Thank you, Naveen, for giving me the privilege to introduce Mr. K.R.Sekar. Mr. K.R.Sekar leads to the Deloitte private practice for Deloitte India. Mr. Sekar has a strong experience of advising companies throughout their business life cycle. His experience lies in working with clients in the high growth sectors and emerging markets on their business strategy and tax advisory. In his previous role, Mr. Sekar led the global business tax practice for Deloitte India. Over the last 30 years, Mr. Sekar has worked with a niche portfolio of clients on the corporate and international taxation, inbound structuring, and controversy management. He is associated with many landmark litigation cases for global companies. In addition to advising clients, Mr. Sekar is active in representing before the government on various tax issues, impacting industry through his positions in chambers of commerce. He is also a prolific writer, contributing regularly to tax journals and mainline papers. He has authored many books, including Transfer Pricing Law and Practice, Taxation of Merger and Demerger and Foreign Collaborations, and Landmark Judgments of Supreme Court on Direct Tax Law. Mr. Sekar is the Senior Vice President of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. He is a member of the India Board of International Fiscal Association and also works closely with other chambers, including NASOCOM. He is the founder director of International Tax Research and Analysis Foundation, a dedicated research body in the field of international taxation. He is recognized as one of the leading tax advisors from India in the Guide to the World's Leading Tax Advisors, published by legal media group Euromoney. He is recognized as one of the leading tax controversy leaders by International Tax Review. And he has no end to it. It's a continuing process. Mr. Sekar, I welcome you to share your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarojji. I welcome you, sir. I would like now Mr. K.K.Chhaparia ji to kindly proceed with the session.
Thank you, Naveen. Sir, this year we find a lot of amendments in the direct tax proposals, and we are eagerly awaiting to hear you. I mean, right from income escaping assessment, significant changes to the amendments with respect to cert assessments, the discontinuation of income tax settlement commission, the dispute resolution mechanism for small taxpayers, tax deduction at source on purchase of goods, depreciation on goodwill, slump sale, capital asset, the provision for transfer of capital asset to a partner on dissolution or reconstitution, etc., etc. Sir, without wasting any time, there are a series of amendments in the direct tax proposals, and I would request you to highlight the August gathering on the topic, sir. Thank you very much.
Good evening, friends. Thank you. At the outset, I thank the exchange for inviting me to give my views on the budget. I hope I am audible to everybody there.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate and give my perspective on the budget. There's a lot of talk before the budget. How is the budget is going to turn around the Indian economy? How is the budget is going to impact the industry? How is the budget is going to change the perspective and whatnot? There is a lot of issues on people asking for increasing the rate of tax, people suggesting that the rich should be taxed, people suggesting that there should be a COVID cess, quite a lot. Similarly, there is a lot of talk from the intellectuals on how the economy should be revived, what are the things that the government should do. Much discussions and much of debate has been flown. The reason is very simple. This year, we had witnessed one of the worst ever human, what I would call a threat for existence itself due to the pandemic. The threat is not only in the form of a human livelihood, has created a threat for the existence of the business and the business community at large, leading to erosion of wealth, leading to significant unemployment, leading to issues on the labor side, and leading finally to the negative or a 0% GDP growth for India. Unprecedented crisis globally witnessed, and India is also not an exception. The question before the government and the question before everybody was that how far the India can recover out of it, whether the recovery curve will be a U shape or a V shape or a W shape. And I have been having a view right from the day one that India will have a V-shaped recovery, not a W, not a U shape. For only two reasons. The reason number one, the Indian market is a very significant market, a very big market for any global economy to ignore India. Second, India has got a world's youngest population is available in India. The skill sets, the market size is phenomenally important for any country not to ignore. And I have been having the view, and I continue to have that view. Against this backdrop, this budget was presented. Before I go to my tax proposals, I will highlight few of the important aspects of the budget, which is very significant for the recovery of the economy. I am not going to call this a dreams budget or what I would call a path-breaking budget, but certainly a budget with, if I look at an accountant side, with an accountant's eye, and with a tax perspective, having been seeing the budget quite a lot, I believe this budget is a workman-like budget trying to push the entire economy. For multiple reasons, but I would like to take only 3 or 4 important reasons. Number one, when your economy is reviving phase, or when the economy is on a recovery phase, or when the economy is down, a country like India, which has got a vast unconnected areas, spending on infrastructure is utmost important, utmost critical. Unless your infrastructure spends up, your infrastructure spend is expedited and infrastructure spending is pushed up, the recovery of the sectors or other sectors is going to be a challenge. Because it's a very common phenomena. If you go by the Indian Economic Survey report of last year and other economic survey reports, the multiplier effect of infra is between 2.5 to 3. Every 1 rupee spent on infra will create a multiplier effect of 3 rupees in the economy. Therefore, in my view, the public spend on infra is very important, and the government should come forward to make excessive or a higher spending on infra. And this budget is absolutely focused on that. More than 2.27 lakh crore on infra spend with a commitment to create a developmental financial institutions for infra is one of the boldest steps. I advocated before the Honorable Finance Minister in a couple of my interactions as a part of my chamber, and also I gave a paper that India needs 3 developmental financial institutions, one for infra, one for MSMEs, and one for agriculture. One NABARD and one SIDBI is not sufficient to grow in a country like India. And I'm happy, fortunately, the government has accepted the proposal of developmental financial institutions for infra with almost 20,000 crore as a capital. That's a big, big push for India. The second important reason why I believe this budget is on the right track is because of creation of 7 mega textile parks. Textile industry is the second largest industry that creates employment in India after agriculture. It's the second largest industry that creates employment both in the organized and unorganized sector. And if you are converting the unorganized sector of textile industry into organized sector of textile industry, that is going to be a big boon for the Indian economy. And the creation of 7 largest textile parks which would not only push the infrastructure, but also help for a textile unit to show as seeds of revival. That's a very, very major step. Therefore, second reason is important on that side. The third is about the healthcare and the public policy, public healthcare system. A country like India with a clear urban and rural divide need to have a strong healthcare policy and a strong government spend. The government has committed again around 2.3 lakh crore on the on the healthcare with 35,000 crore on the COVID. A huge infra spend coupled with a 74% hike in FDI for the insurance companies. A great proposal on the healthcare. Fourth one is on the education. I have been having a view that education should be liberalized and India needs to have more educational institutions. The government is taking every budget, I'm seeing a step, and this budget also the government has taken a step. And the last but not the least, when you are talking about a COVID situation and the pandemic crisis, the government is not constrained about the fiscal deficit of 9.5% or 9%. The government is more committed to public spending. With the amount of public spending that the government kept at its disposal, and to my mind, that sort of a public disposal, public spend by the government would create more and more opportunities, would expedite more and more job creation. The government is not constrained about the 9.5% of public fiscal deficit. Globally, most of the countries are looking to go beyond the normal stream of the fiscal deficit for only one reason. The ability for the government to monetize the fiscal deficit gap through the public borrowings is pretty important, and this government is willing to look at it and willing to take a bold step forward, and therefore that reason I commend this budget. Now, when you commend this budget, the most important aspect of the government when it comes to public policy is of the public tax policy. This government has made it very, very clear in the tax policy, and I'm very extremely happy to note that there has been a lot of talk by people to say that we should import COVID tax, COVID cess. There has been a lot of people who are commenting, stating that there should be a tax on the riches. Unfortunately, though that we have got, still we are in the socialist thinking, which is an outdated thinking in my view. We are still looking at a philosophy of the left, in my view, which is an outdated philosophy. I am aware I'm talking to a state where there is a lot of left sympathizers are there, but still I'm very conscious of the fact that the left philosophy, which is to tax the rich, has got no place anymore. Still, there are people who think that creating a wealth is a sin and therefore tax all the wealthy people and tax all the rich and tax all the startups, forgetting the fact that these entrepreneurs create an employment in the India. There's still a talk in the country, some sort of armchair intellectuals create a picture that the tax rate should be higher. And this government has made a commitment that they brought down the tax from 25%, 15% for all the manufacturing industry, and they brought down the rate of tax from 30% to 22%. There's a lot of proposal, there's a lot of recommendations on recommending the government to increase the rate of tax. And I'm happy the government did not choose to accept any of the recommendations, and the government made it very, very clear that we are not going to increase the rate of taxes. And that is a very welcome step, because what is important is a consistency on the tax rates, and more important, stability in the tax rates is what is a critical need for the hour, and the government has committed to that and adhered to it, despite there's an all-round pressure on the government to increase the rate of taxes. Therefore, the government did not cave into the pressure, and when there's no increase in the rate of tax, the government chose to raise receipts funds through what I would call a most preferred route of disinvestment and through monetization of the assets. I am not getting onto the monetization of assets. I am not getting onto the pros and cons of the disinvestment, but suffice to say that the government has looked upon the alternative methods for raising revenue to meet its higher spend in the public, which is very important for revival of the economy at this point of time. Now, the government has brought a stability in the tax rates. Moving from tax rates, the government wanted to streamline the tax administration. Before the budget, the government introduced faceless assessments and faceless appeals. There are a lot of points on faceless assessment and faceless appeals. There are people who are raising the pros and cons of face, how far it is going to be effective, how far it will not be effective. That is a discussion that always happens. And in my view, certainly a faceless assessment and faceless appeals is an important step the government should strive. But what I'm more keen is just not through assessment, phase assessment and faceless appeal, but take it to the ultimate one when the Tax Administrative Reform Commission, TARC report headed by Dr. Patsadi Shom, gave a report on not only a dispute resolution mechanism, but the prevention of the entire disputes. The tax administration should not only be transparent, but also make sure that there's every possibility of prevention of disputes. We have a faceless assessment and faceless appeal was introduced. Now with the introduction of the faceless assessment and the faceless appeal system, there is going to be a loss of personal connect. The government, one of the important aspects of Tax Administrative Reform Commission when it recommended the e-assessment or a faceless assessment is that there should be a minimal connection between the taxpayer and the tax officials. And also, the committee recommended that the assessment should be completed by the people of experts, preferably industry experts who has got knowledge about the industry. For example, somebody sitting in Calcutta may not be an IT expert to assess a technology company in Calcutta. Somebody sitting in Bangalore cannot assess a financial services industry in Mumbai because it needs the industry expertise. And therefore, what the Tax Administrative Reform Commission suggested is that the government should introduce assessment which is on a distance based but done by the industry experts, not by the regular tax officials. Probably in my view, faceless assessment and faceless appeal is a step in that direction. And that's what I said, if faceless assessment and faceless appeal leads to conclusion of an assessments by industry experts, be it technology industry, be it a manufacturing industry, be it a services industry, if it is concluded by the industry experts, definitely the faceless assessment and faceless appeal will be much better and definitely will yield more results. Otherwise, in my view, it is just going to be a conversion of a physical assessment through a technology, then it would have a challenge. Therefore, my endeavor and my suggestion and my recommendation is that enhance not a scope of face assessment, but laid it to the ultimate one by assessment concluded by the industry experts. In that direction, the government this year brought faceless tribunal. There's a lot of skepticism around the faceless tribunal. And I'm also one of the persons, I'm not as skeptical, but I'm very cautious and I'm also very eager to know how the government is going to formulate rules on the faceless tribunal. If a faceless tribunal is going to go through only a video conferencing, then the challenges are going to be on the members plus the bar who was going to argue, because we see quite a lot of adjournments in the tribunal despite giving the paper books much earlier. Therefore, if the faceless tribunal should become successful, there should be a mechanism by which the tribunal, not only the members, but also the registry and the support staff should be having the technical ability to access all the records, paper book, and help the members. And that needs to be done. If that is done, then definitely the faceless tribunal will become more successful. That's a good measure, a well thought out measure, but we need to see on the implementation of it. The second important aspect which this budget has done on the tax proposal, I'm going by my own priority, not going by what people talk about it, but I'm going in my own mindset on the priorities. The second important aspect which this budget has done on the administration side is bringing down on the reassessment. I'm extremely happy to note that the time limitation for the reassessment has been brought it down to 3 years. At the same time, the government also made it clear that the scope for the reassessment will be for 10 years in case if there is a tax evasion or a serious tax fraud case happens. If I go through the details of the section, what is called amended, it talks about the two scenarios. Number one, a tax evasion and a tax fraud, or the assessments not concluded in accordance with the provisions of the income tax and the report is submitted by the C&D. So there is a fear that, and the limit what has been set for that sort of a more than 6 years is up to 10 years is 50 lakhs. That means if there is an issue where the tax impact is more than 50 lakhs, and if that issue is in line with a tax evasion or a tax fraud, then a reassessment is possible. The question that arises is that what is tax evasion or a tax fraud? What is concealment? And also says that it is to be done in C&AG report and not in accordance with the provisions of the Income Tax Act. How do we interpret it? The way I looked at is that first is that the Honorable Finance Minister in budget speech said that the issue what is sought to be reopened under the provisions of 147 for value of 50 lakhs and above beyond the prescribed limit of 3 years should be a serious fraud or a tax evasion. There are plethora of judgments which says that, 1 minute please. There are plethora of judgments of Supreme Court and High Court which says that Finance Minister's speech in the Honorable House of Parliament can always be taken as a tool for interpretation, to know the intention. Therefore, my first view is that a mere omission by the income tax officer on a particular issue for which there has been adequate disclosure by the taxpayer cannot be a reason for it considered as a tax evasion or a tax fraud. Second, what the law prescribes is that the issue should also be approved by the Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax, who is having a head, who is a head of the particular jurisdiction. That means that the sufficient responsibility has been cast on the Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax to go through the issue and give the approval. And before issues a notice, there will also be opportunity to be given to the taxpayer to respond to that. Therefore, if there is an issue of 50 lakhs and above, and that 50 lakhs arising on account of only an equivalent of a search and seizure case or a tax evasion or a tax fraud, which are very serious in nature, then only the time limit of more than 3 years would apply. But a mere omission by the tax officer, when the assessee has disclosed all the relevant information, should not warrant a time limit of more than 3 years. However, this is my view. I will hope the government Central Board of Direct Taxes will come out with adequate guidelines on that. The third issue that has created the attention of the taxpayers is advance rulings. And in my view, that step by the government towards advance ruling is in the wrong direction. It is not in the right direction. The entire advance ruling as a body was created by the government in order to create a certainty for the investors, particularly the global investors and the non-resident investors who are investing into the country, for a certainty on the tax issues, as India has got a history of creating a tax litigation of more than 10 years. Vodafone and Kane is a classic example where Supreme Court gave a ruling, the government gave a retrospective amendment, and Vodafone and Kane went to the International Arbitration Tribunal. Both of them won the case, and both of them are pressing for a refund, and the refunds are significantly higher. And the government, I saw a report, the government has committed to offer one oil well itself for Kane as a means of giving a refund. The issue, therefore, is that the government is always in a quandrum when you are when it has got legal issues. And that's one of the reasons Authority of Advance Ruling was created. And the Authority of Advance Ruling was gained a highly respected when it was presided over by a person of the caliber of Justice Ranganathan. Later on, the Advance Ruling had its own issues by which there's a huge pendency of cases before the Authority of Advance Ruling. It was amended by which instead of Supreme Court, we can have a retired High Court judge itself. Still, the pendency is there in AR. Now, what the government has brought is that it will, instead of Authority of Advance Ruling, it will become a Board of Advance Rulings, and it will come under the function of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. The CBDT will nominate the members to preside over the advance rulings. And that is a dangerous step in my view. That will kill the entire institution in my view, because you cannot expect your authority or institution working under the supervision of the Central Board of Direct Taxes to give a ruling in a fair and transparent manner. You cannot rule out the prejudice or the bias in favor of the department. Therefore, killing an institution is not correct, and the government should desist from appointing the board members of the Central Board of Direct Taxes to the advanced ruling. Instead of that, the government should nominate some of the retired tribunal vice presidents or integrate with the local tribunal by which the vice presidents of the tribunal can preside over the advanced ruling rather than the Central Board of Direct Tax members, because if board members preside over it, it will be nothing but an extension of the arm of the Income Tax Department and not an independent arm under the Ministry of Law, Justice and Company Affairs, or any independent arm of the giving a justice to the taxpayers. And this move of converting the Authority of Advance Ruling to the Board of Advance Rulings under the superintendence of the Central Board of Direct Taxes is a retrograde step, and in my view, the government should desist from that. The third important move that the government has done in the current year is abolition of Settlement Commission. And I am not a great votary of Settlement Commission, because Settlement Commission has lost its relevance long back for multiple reasons. In India, particularly in taxation in India, any independent body, any body that is intended to provide a resolution for the disputes has not met with success unless that body is an independent body. Settlement Commission, it was created with the greatest fanfare in those years. Settlement Commission met with reasonably a success. But Settlement Commission has got multiple challenges in the form of a technical, legal, and procedural issues, and also with the members. The problem with the Settlement Commission as well as in the AR is that you always want to get a members who are retired from the service to preside over it. No retired member will have that sort of what I would call a fire in resolving the issues, barring some few members like Justice Ranganathan. Settlement Commission did not yield the results, though it yielded the results at the beginning. Settlement Commission off late has not yielded the results. And in my view, that is one of the best alternative forum for resolving the disputes, but you have got, it's only a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you need to go before the assessment is closed, before the fine issuance or the final order. Instead of abolishing the Settlement Commission, the government should have converted the Settlement Commission into a forum for a private ruling or forum for the ruling for not just resolution of disputes, but also the prevention of disputes. The government ought to have converted the Settlement Commission into a forum by which the taxpayers as well as the department officials go for a private ruling, which would be binding on both of them. Authority of Advance Ruling is for the non-residents and for the residents who have got a higher value of transaction. Whereas What the industry is looking for a private ruling, which would prevent the disputes, and that is one of the views of the Tax Administrative Reform Commission. Therefore, in my view, the government ought to have converted the Settlement Commission into an alternative dispute resolution forum, not in the lines of dispute resolution panel, but on independent body, which would have created more and more confidence for the taxpayers. Unfortunately, the government chose to kill the Settlement Commission. If today the government is killing a Settlement Commission, after 3 years, AIR also will get killed, and that is what I am worried about, creating an institutions. Because in India, the taxation disputes are becoming increasingly higher and higher. Therefore, creating alternative dispute resolution forum is very, very important. The third measure, which in my view is a welcome measure, is creating a permanent dispute resolution panel headed by a person not less than a Chief Commissioner of Income Tax for resolution of disputes of small values and the small taxpayers. It is a welcome step. It's encourageable, and I hope this institution at least will retain its character and also retain the purpose for which it is being created. As in the past, no alternative dispute resolution forums, barring AIR for a certain point of time, has served its purpose fully. And therefore, I hope this dispute resolution forum for the small taxpayers will survive for the purpose for which it is created. Now, moving from the 3 procedural issues, one of the other important issues that has done by the amendment is, again, this I would like to call as a revenues bias amendment. The government has not increased the tax rates, and the government thought that TDS is the best form of increasing the tax base of the taxpayers, as well as that's one of the best methods for the government to raise revenue. We had seen amendments in couple of last year and the year before last on 206C. 206C was amended, by which the government brought in collection of tax revenues in respect of purchase and sale of goods. This year, the government made an amendment by which buy and purchase and sale of goods is also subject to TDS. The tax deducted at source is normally considered as levy only in respect of a transactions where there is a principal and agency relationship is established. If you look at all the TDS provisions, somebody is discharging a payment on behalf of X, and therefore the tax deducted source was levied. When you buy and sell of goods, it's not a principal agency relationship. Therefore, a TDS on buy and purchase of goods absolutely incorrect. Conceptually, it is incorrect. In fact, I'm going one step beyond. There cannot be any TDS on the domestic transactions because no developed countries is creating a TDS, tax deducted source on the domestic transactions. Because in the domestic transactions, the other party is already subject to tax, is already liable to pay tax. And in the earlier days, TDS as a concept was introduced because most of the taxpayers do not have a permanent account number, and those days there is no technology. When the TDS as a concept was introduced in the Income Tax Act, there is no ability for the tax department to trace the other party, and therefore it was on the onus or it was on the responsibility of the person who is discharging the payment to deduct tax at source. Now, having got the PAN number and Aadhaar number and linking of everybody's tax number, PAN number to every transaction, the concept of TDS has become redundant in my view. As a concept, it has become redundant, and therefore I thought the government should abolish the entire provisions of TDS on the domestic transaction. But of late, the government is still introducing more and more amendments to the tax deducted at source for only one reason. The TDS is becoming a good source for the government to realize its tax revenue or realize its target of tax collection. If you look at the direct tax collections, the government has almost met the target in every year, but for last year, which is again due to the pandemic crisis. And most of the collections from various big cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Calcutta, and all the big cities, TDS is one of the important source of the collection of taxes by the respective commissionerates. TDS almost contributes 50 to 60% of the tax collection by every commissionerate. And therefore, the government thought that tax deducted at source is one of the best means of collection of taxes. And in that context, the government expanded the scope of TDS net for purchase of goods at more than certain value by a certain percentage. And in my view, it is not a correct step. It's a purely keeping the the government has introduced a step considering purely revenue interest in mind and tax collection in mind. And it's a retrograde step because in my view, the TDS provision should be abolished. However, the government has done it. However, there is a provision conflict between 260 and the new provision. 260 has got a provision when the appropriate tax has been written in the respective provisions. 260 would not apply, and therefore people would go for this provision. However, normally in purchase and sale of goods, the margins are going to be very, very low. Some of the distributors have got a margin of only 0.1%, and therefore this sort of purchase of goods, TDS on purchase of goods, may not achieve the desired result, as the people who are paying taxes will go for a lower withholding of tax, asking for a lower rate of taxes. So therefore, again, it's not a correct step, but the government has done it with only purely revenue interest in mind, and in my view, this move should get addressed, as TDS on purchase of goods goes against the fundamental concept of tax deducted at source. The next move that has come in from the government, from the budget on the tax proposals, is about, 1 minute please, there's a mobile is coming. Sorry about that. The next move that has come up from the, which I'm a little bit unhappy on the tax proposals, is about goodwill. Supreme Court said that the goodwill is eligible for depreciation on amalgamation. While I have my own views on the Supreme Court judgment, in my humble view, Supreme Court judgment has not addressed some of the technical issues on the definition of actual cost, definition of the return on value. But having Supreme Court given the judgment, fortunately, it has not reversed until the last, but the government this year chose to reverse it, by which bringing an amendment in the definition of intangibles in section 32, that the goodwill is not eligible for depreciation. And I am puzzled and I'm perplexed by this sort of amendments, because this sort of amendments has got no relevance in India. The tax measure that would have come on account of goodwill will be a pittance of hundreds of crores, not even thousands of crores. And after giving the Supreme Court judgment, that is what I said. In my view, there's a difference between a visionary thinking, like a finance minister and the Honorable Prime Minister, but blurred vision thinking of a bureaucrats and sitting in the North Block and the Central Board of Direct Taxes. It's a blurred thinking stating that the goodwill benefit of Supreme Court judgment is going to benefit the taxpayers to the huge tune. No, it's not. Reason is simple. What we are going to get the depreciation amortized over a period of time, even if it gets amortized in the tax laws, you are going to get a minimum alternative tax. Therefore, it is not going to act as a permanent shield. And therefore, this sort of amendments is meaningless. And this sort of amendments gives a perspective that there should not be any judgments in favor of the taxpayers. And that sort of a mindset is not correct when it comes to tax administration. And that is what gives a negative perception about the India's tax administration, despite all the forward-looking policy measures in India's economy and the revival. This sort of amendments, which do not go well with the taxpayers, should be discouraged. And in my view, the amendment made by the government on removing the depreciation on goodwill is the most ill-thought and not appropriate. Further, there is an amendment which says that the taxpayers who have claimed a depreciation and part of the block of assets, they will notify on how to do it, what will be the treatment of short-term capital gain. One need not do that. You have amended the provision by the depreciation is not eligible for goodwill. You take it prospective. Say that the goodwill, any goodwill arising on account of the particular date is not eligible for depreciation. However, we will not impact the depreciation that has been claimed in the past. Why do you want to unwind the transactions? What is the benefit? I am absolutely perplexed, and in my view, this amendment should not be there. Having introduced the amendment, make it very clear that the depreciation arising on goodwill after such and such date only will not be eligible. In the past, will continue to allow the depreciation. I hope the government will listen to the taxpayers and address this issue, Because though it is not a huge tax impact, it is going to significantly impact the perception that has been created on the budget by the various people, by the various intellectuals, that this budget is a most forward-looking budget. But this sort of amendment does not go well with the perceived policy of the government to have a best ranking in the ease of doing business. The next amendment that has attracted my attention is again two amendments. One amendment, I welcome the amendment. Another amendment again is not well thought of. The amendment on the contribution to the labor welfare funds, collection from the employee and not contributing the labor welfare fund will be permanently disallowed. I agree with that amendment because there are a lot of companies who are collecting money from the employees and but not depositing within the time. And in my view, it is a crime. In my view, it should not be encouraged, as any contribution recovered from the employee should be deposited to the labor welfare funds within the time, and failure to deposit the funds within the time does not entail you the reduction. And therefore, amending that particular provision, plugging that loophole is very important. But what is the other amendment which I'm not happy is about 2.5 lakhs of ULIP insurance. Anybody who's contributing more than 2.5 lakhs should be subject to tax on the exit or the gains or the interest. Again, it is not a well thought out amendment from an economic perspective. Why? The government, somewhere there is a bureaucrat thinking. I don't blame the government for that. I blame the bureaucracy for that. Somewhere there is a myopic thinking by the bureaucracy that anybody who is contributing more than 2.5 lakhs into a ULIP or insurance is a rich person, and therefore they should be taxed. Taxation as a system of socialism is a bygone thinking. Taxation as a concept of a socialistic concept of equaling the rich with the not so rich or converting the poor into rich is a bygone thinking. That days are over when we had a tax rates of 90% and 85%. Taxation is a measure for the government to raise the resources in a legitimate and in the right way to fund the government expenditure. And that is what the new thinking. If you are converting that legitimate thinking and the new thinking into a myopic thinking of collecting the taxes from the rich, that shows a wrong direction set apart by the government, by the bureaucracy to travel. And in my view, collecting the taxes in respect of the ULIP of more than 2.5 lakhs is a retrograde step. Second, India as an economy has been so significantly funded on the base of the savings. India is not a country that survives on the debt funding or a debt trap. The India as a country is survived only on the savings economy. There's a lot of savings, whether it is by the middle class people or by anybody else. There's a lot of savings goes into it, and saving is one of the important critical components of the Indian economy. If the government is going to tax this sort of a savings instrument by people who are going to pay more than 2.5 lakhs, that is not eligible, and we're going to tax the gain or the interest arising on of it, you are going to kill the savings, and that is not a right for Indian society and Indian economic environment. So economically, it is not correct. Conceptually, it is not correct. And more important, there may not be much people who are doing more than 2.5 lakhs. Even by the quantitative aspect, it may not be correct. And therefore, in my view, the government should withdraw that amendment. The last provision which I would like to highlight it before I do my conclusion. There has been a lot of talk about startups. There has been a lot of recommendations for the startups. Government is considering every aspect of encouraging the startups, and this year is no exception. The three amendments what the government has brought in for startups are very welcome measures. Number one, 1% company under the Companies Act, by which it enhances the limits, certainly is the most welcome measure, because startup environment is normally influenced by one man thinking, one man's idea, whether that idea in the form of technology, whether the idea is in the form of a digital, or whatever be the idea, that idea gets converted into a startup and then going for the funds. So therefore, normally a startup at the conceptual stage, it's only a one-person company or a one-man company, what we call the OPC or a one-man company. There has been a challenge under the company side because the size and the limit was set up at very low. Government has absolutely made a right decision of increasing the limits by which now the people can set up a one-person company. Not only that, a corresponding amendment was also proposed by which instead of 180 days, a 120-day stay is sufficient by which those people can set up a one-person company. I really welcome that amendment and welcome that. The second important amendment made in the Companies Act was proposed is that increasing the size of the small business. It is also very important because one of the important issues of small business, be it in MSME sector, be it in non-MSME sector, is that increased compliances. By enhancing the turnover size for the small companies, these companies will get relaxed on the compliances, and therefore it is a welcome amendment. Third, the startup benefit from the tax laws has also been extended. And also the 54GB also provision has been amended by which investing the startups. So the government still views the startup as a major measure and it continues to do so, and therefore I welcome that startup measure. And the government has also given equal amendments in respect of what I call the international financial setup, international financial IFC setup in Gujarat. There's a lot of amendments to promote that, including relocation, including setting up of a foreign fund in that particular place. So the dividend distribution tax amendments, all those amendments are welcome from the International Financial Corporation perspective. Now, having welcomed certain amendments, having criticized certain amendments, I was hoping only one amendment, which is very, very important considering the crisis or the pandemic. There are a lot of companies which are participating in the CSR activities, particularly in the pandemic situation. There are a lot of companies who are contributing towards a pandemic, CSR fund or a COVID fund or quite a lot. I was hoping that the government would amend section 37 to allow the deduction in respect of the CSR expenditure incurred as a part of the COVID expenditure. When the vaccination is introduced, a lot of corporates are encouraged to go for a vaccination drive, to go for a sponsorship for the vaccination. And I expected that the government will make a special provision for in respect of those expenditure which are necessitated due to the COVID or contributing to the COVID fund as eligible for deduction. The government has not done it. I hope when the budget gets passed, when a lot of chambers and the taxpayers should take it up with the government, because this is a very, very important proposal that should be heard by the government, as a lot of corporates, a lot of taxpayers have contributed significantly and participated in this significantly to overcome the pandemic crisis. And those corporates, those taxpayers should be benefited by for account of the contribution what they have done. Though there cannot be any tax on charity, but definitely the sort of a positive measure by the government would send correct signals to all the taxpayers. And I expected that amendment has not come, which I expect that amendment should be introduced. Last but not the least, for the MSME sectors, considering the fact the MSME sectors are going through the crisis, I have expected certain provisions in the income tax law for the MSME sectors, but unfortunately, that has not been addressed. I hope the government will address provision for the MSME sectors in the current, when the bill gets passed. Before I close my session, one more announcement made by the government of creating a securities market code, consolidating all the legislations into one code, creating a security market code is again a very welcome step by the government, as a security code like one law, considering all the law, Securities Contract Regulation Act, Forward Exchange Act, Forward Act, so many legislations dealing with the securities has come under one code, which is very, very important. And therefore, I welcome that step, and I'm sure that code will make sure that minimum compliance and maximum governance is at the doorstep. As I said, this budget has set the tone for major reforms in the infra, education, public policy, as well as in healthcare. Tax administration is concerned, There's a lesser amendments on the taxation with regard to rate of increase in the taxes. There's a lesser amendments with regard, which puts a burden on the taxpayers, barring the 2 or 3 amendments, which sets the thinking of the tax administration, which needs to be set right. There's one more amendment came in the minimum alternative tax for the secondary adjustment. I'm not taking time. So therefore, the path through to which the government wants to travel is made out very, very clear. It wants to travel on the path of reforms. It seeks to travel by ensuring transparency and bringing legitimacy to all the tax, to all its acts. This is the first time where I didn't see any surprises between what the finance minister said in the speech as well as in the bills, barring this advance rulings and the TDS on the purchase of goods and the goodwill definition. Barring that, I do not see much surprises. The government wants to travel on the path of reforms. The government wants to travel on the path of legitimacy and transparency. The government has set up the high priorities in its proposals. The implementation is the key. If all those proposals gets implemented, be it in the tax administration, as I said, the phase assessment, faceless appeal, and the faceless tribunal gets implemented. Yes, I am cynical and skeptical about the board of advance rulings, but if it gets implemented in the right direction, concept of free assessment has been brought down to 3 years, sets it in the right direction. If all those things are implemented in the right way, and as I said, key is the implementation, definitely I would see a better India in the next 2 years, not only from a point of view of industry and economic perspective, but also from the view of tax administration. Yes, as a chartered accountants and the tax practitioners, we always thrived and survived on multiple tax issues. But time has come for the government to look at all the tax issues, resolve the disputes, minimize the prevention of disputes rather than addressing the dispute. If that government is taking all those steps very seriously, and I'm sure there'll be a better days to come. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity, and thanks a lot for being patient hearing, and I welcome any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sekar. It was a wonderful presentation. You discussed about the faceless tribunal, reassessment, advance rulings, settlement commission, TDS provisions, goodwill write-on, depreciation on goodwill, startups, etc. Sir, some questions have been put before for you. So I'm raising 1 or 2 questions which have been put before you. So one question which has been asked is, in the earlier section 149, subsection 1 clause B, the time limit was 6 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. So the time limit for reopening was only 7 years. I mean, if you consider that way. Now, in the present proposed amendment, if the escapement is more than 50 lakhs, the reopening can be done for 10 years. So does it mean that the time limit has in a way extended? Because with effect from 1/4/21, there can be a situation that the SECI has not maintained the record for the 9th year. So can it mean that the reopening can happen for assessment year, say for example, 2012-13, which is not possible in the present scenario?
Very simple.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Let me make it very simple. The 50 lakhs case is in respect of the issue where there is a tax evasion and the tax fraud. It is not a case of every issue of 50, that is my interpretation. It is not a case of every issue where the tax issue value is more than 50 lakhs. Second, from a conceptual perspective, if the issue of tax evasion is more than 50, issue on which the tax is being evaded is more than 50 lakhs, and it comes a serious fraud, it comes as a part of those, one of the conditions gets satisfied, except for a minute that I had disclosed all the information, but the commissioner or the AO has not applied his mind and has not completed the tax assessment. Whether that will come, in my view may not be.
So what I'm asking is,
I'll answer your point. I'm just coming one by one. However, whether this 10 years will go from 1/4/21 That means, will it apply for the previous years from 1/4/2012, by which the reassessment period would have got expired by 2020? But because of this, they got a life of another 2 more years. Going by the present provisions, the answer is yes. What has come out in the bill, answer is yes. But is that is intended? Answer is not so. I am hoping that the government will address this issue when the final bill gets passed, because what is intended is only for those years after the 1/4/21, not for the existing 12-13. In my view, no. I hope that issue should get addressed when the bill gets passed.
Sir, I find that Dr. Rakesh Gupta has a different way to answer, so we will come to his answer, his view, once his turn comes. Sir, another
I will
question.
respond all my answers, then you can go to Mr. Rajesh Gupta.
So second question which has come up is, since the settlement commission is no longer there with effect from 1/2/2021, so what will happen to those SSAs who were mentally prepared to file a application before the settlement commission? So will they never get an opportunity to file an application to the settlement commission?
As per the law, the settlement commission, what the law has amended is that, are you disturbing? 1 minute, I'll just switch off the mobile. I'm sorry. As per the law, what has been proposed is that the applications pending on the date will get forwarded to the Board of Settlement as an interim board. So if anybody proposes to file the application, in fact, I am one of the persons, because one of my clients, I was going for settlement commission. Now with this proposal that's coming up, if you are proposing to file an application, unless the application is on the respective date is filed, then you cannot avail the provisions. If between the today's and date of filing, I'm not so sure what will be the position, but the law says that the application should be filed on that respective date by which the application should get transferred to the interim board for settlement commissions.
Sir, third question which has been asked is regarding the faceless tribunal. So as you are aware, sir, the search assessments, if it is a search case or a survey case, that are still being handled on a physical manner. I mean, that are being transferred to the central charges. Similarly, appeal cases also, those cases which are having a search cases or international taxation, they are still under the physical appeal hearing mode. So the tribunal, they are saying that the entire tribunal things will go faceless. I mean, whether the search cases and the international taxation cases, other cases will be outside the.
Very honestly, we need to wait for the details of how the faceless tribunal rules are going to come up.
Okay, sir.
But if you ask me, am I a supporter of the faceless tribunal? I'm not a supporter of faceless tribunal in all matters. In fact, I was speaking with one of the NCLT members, National Company Law Tribunal members, where today all the NCLT hearings are happening only through the technology, through the video conferencing or whatever it is. He said it's very difficult because the entire paper book, we don't have any paper book in our presence. Everything I need to go through serial and the paper book through the technology and then read it and understand. It's become very difficult for them. In context of income tax tribunal in India, we always have a problem of filing a plethora of paper books, starting from multiple number of cases, multiple number of documents, and tribunal is last of the fact-finding authority. The facts which are not accepted, the facts which are not covered, or facts which are not placed before the Commission of Income Tax Appeals, whether it is a search, whether it is any case, those facts should be cleared by the tax tribunal. And when you want to place the facts, you need to place plethora of documents for the tribunal to appreciate the facts. And therefore, the SC or the department is bound to file plenty of paper book before the tax tribunal. And in that context, the faceless tribunal will become a challenge. The only hope that I have is that members, department representatives, and the assessees representatives should be equipped to handle the faceless tribunal. For example, when I've been doing with a lot of international tax matters, a competent authority with the US or a UK with the Indian competent authority, I have never appeared before any of those authorities in person. I used to file 7 or 8 volumes of paper books, huge copies of paper book before the competent authorities of US or UK or any country, and also with India. The competent authorities goes through every paper and every fact precisely, and they will ask us to give me a executive summary of all the facts which I placed before them and then appear before them. It has been successful when we are doing this sort of before the competent authorities. However, their attention span is very, very high, and they hear the matter. They will like to dedicate 3 or 4 hours for one case, and they will hear the matter completely. And if the faceless tribunal needs to be successful, the tribunal members, department representative, and the assist representative should be able to explain the matter, give more time, and make sure that everybody is on the same page. It will take a lot of time. It is nothing but a cultural shift which needs to happen. If the cultural shift happens and the rules are modified accordingly, because today you don't have to store the records after the clouds have come in. You can store the records anywhere. Your storage space also less. So if faceless tribunal takes into account all these factors, and more important, the quality of the audio and the quality of the video and the quality of technology is good, it should become successful. But what is more important is the framing of rules as well as sufficient training for everybody. For example, I'm just taking one more example before I take the next question, or there's no question, saying thanks to you. In the case of during the COVID situation, I happened to hear most of the e-tribunals. Very often the department representative will say, sir, I have not heard, I have not heard, I have not heard. And due to that, my case got adjourned 4 times. So when you're doing the faceless tribunal, you should take all these things into consideration and do that. If you do that, I don't see a challenge in that. And also it creates more of an acceptability, but we need to wait for them.
Thank you, sir. Sir, some more questions are there, but then I find that Dr. Rakesh Gupta has also joined. And so since he also will be speaking on direct tax, so whatever question remains, we will be asking him, questions to Dr. Rakesh Gupta.
If you permit me, if I have no sessions, I would like to log off from this.
So once again, sir, let me, on behalf of the organizers, thank you, and over to the organizers to give you a formal vote of thanks, sir.
Thank you, Chhaparia ji. Thank you, K.R.Sekar ji, for explaining all the budget amendments. Which prominence you felt, it was very good to learn so much from your side. On behalf of Views Exchange, Chartered Accountant Study Circle, EIRC, and on behalf of all the members who are attending, I thank you for sparing time, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. I wish you all the best for your further course of hearing. Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Friends, we have next session speaker, CA Rakesh Gupta ji with us, Dr. Rakesh Gupta. I would request Sarojji Swaikar to kindly introduce Dr. Rakesh Gupta in front of the August House. Sarojji, you are muted. Please unmute.
Thank you, Naveen. Sir, you are welcome on this session. I take the privilege to introduce Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji, who is the eminent speaker on today's budget speech. Born in 1963, he did his high school and intermediate and secured merit positions in 1976 and 1978 respectively. He did his graduation from St. John's College, Agra in the year 1980 and secured first rank in university. He is a fellow member of our Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is also a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He is associate member of Institute of Cost and Works Accountants of India. He also did his MBA with specialization in finance. He did his LLB and secured first rank in the university and was awarded gold medal. He did his LLM and he did his PhD also. He was appointed member Income Tax Appellate Tribunal at the age of 37 years and posted at Hyderabad but resigned later on. He has co-authored with Dr. Rajkumar Agarwal a book on search and seizure and assessment of search cases published by leading publishers, Taxman. He has co-authored with Dr. Rajkumar Agarwal another book on taxation of real estate developers and joint development arrangements published by leading publishers, Taxman. He earlier practiced as chartered accountant from 1984 to 2000 and now practicing as advocate and appearing in Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, High Courts and Supreme Courts of India. He represents UP government in Supreme Court of India as special counsel. He has argued high-profile cases of the country at tribunal and High Court, drawing wide media coverage. His few decisions to the credit from Supreme Court are Hotel Blumen 321 ITR 362. Proposition of law was that 143(2) notice is must for validity of assessment. Another one is Alam Extrusion 319 ITR 306. Proposition of law was that amendment in the Act providing provident fund, etc., paid on or before the due date of filing of return, ostensibly brought with prospective date, in fact, is deemed to be retrospective, and many more. I welcome Dr. Rakesh Gupta ji to share his deliberation.
Thank you, Saroj. I would request K.K.Chhaparia to kindly proceed on with the meeting. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Thanks, Naveen. Sir, as you are aware, when the earlier speaker was speaking, you were having a different view as far as time limit for reassessment proceedings are concerned. So, and again, on the search provisions also, I find that when Saroj Swaika was introducing you, that you have written a book on search and seizure. And as you are aware, in the current finance bill, there has been a series of amendments with respect to the search cases and the Income Tax Settlement Commission. Then again, I find that when Saroj was introducing you, you were the one who argued the matter in Alam Extrusion case, the leading and judgment with respect to section 3615 allowability. And now we find the amendment in this section. So again, we cannot find a better person than you to dwell upon this issue. Sir, we are eagerly waiting for you to hear you for giving insights on these provisions, the settlement commission, the new norms with respect to dispute resolution mechanism for small taxpayers, the reassessment provisions. I think, sir, the previous speaker has spoken in depth, in detail about the goodwill part. So we will like to hear more on you on these topics, and other than that, you know exactly what else to be covered within the time given to you. Sir, without wasting any time and coming between you and the delegates, I'm, sir, giving the charge to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chhaparia sir. Thank you, Saroj sir, for having introduced me. I mean, more than what I deserved way. Yes, picking the thread from where Chhaparia sir, asked that question. Chhaparia sir, though there is a direct provision in this proposed bill, but a general principle of law in the matter of limitation is that something which has become time barred, when the new limitation provision comes into existence, something which is already dead cannot be revived. This is a general principle of limitation. But very nicely of the legislature that they have introduced the first proviso to section 149 itself, to subsection 1 after clause B, which says that something which has become time barred as on 1/4/2021 now cannot be revived, even if there is now the larger limitation period. So assessment year 12-13, as you asked, now 12-13 has become barred on 31/3/2019, 6 years from the end of the relevant assessment year. Therefore, as on 1/4/2021, that proceeding is bad. That proceeding is barred. So something which is barred cannot be revived, though the legislature has clarified it by inserting the proposed proviso. So this is my reply, number 1. Now, number 2, regarding that employees' contribution towards the PF and ESI. Now, I can derive some satisfaction that you got the law laid down not by Alom Extrusion, because Alom Extrusion was primarily an employer's contribution. The amendment which was made by Finance Act 2003, ostensibly prospectively, Honorable Supreme Court was persuaded to hold it as a curative amendment and to have retrospective effect. But then other decision, which also I had got the privilege of arguing with the Delhi High Court, And that decision was authored by none other than by Lord Justice Arjun Sikri, who, as he then was in Delhi High Court as the presiding judge, in the case of AMIL Limited, AIMIL Limited. And the issue before my lord was now whether the due date as given under the explanation to section 36 subsection 1 small 5a, ostensibly to mean the due date under the PF Act and the ESI Act, now whether can be treated to be meaning the due date for the purpose of filing of return under section 139(1) as is there in case of the employer's contribution. That was the issue. Now I remember that I had an occasion to argue the matter in AMIL Limited, and that is reported somewhere in 390 or 320 or 321 ITR. Now we are in the age of 440 ITR. The legislature took, now you can very well imagine, 6 ITRs in 1 year. Now these many, about 16 years, I mean the legislature took, I mean to clarify this kind of a position. The argument which was conveyed by me was that once the employer deducts from the employees, then it becomes part of the employer's liability and responsibility and partakes the character of employer's contribution. And therefore, now the provision of section 43B applies mutatis mutandis in respect of employees' contributions deducted by the employer. And therefore, Lord Justice Sikri in para 8 of that decision now wrote that the due date, though has been given restrictive meaning under explanation to section 36 on 5A, but having regard to the overall scheme, having regard to the overall purport and object, having regard to the legislative amendment in section 43B, now that time limit which is there under section 43B as the due date of filing of return under section 139(1) should be treated to be read here also. Number 1. Number 2, the argument which was made by me and which ultimately found approval from their lordships was that when the Parent Act, under which all these things are governed, a PF Act, the ESI Act, when those Parents Act condone the delay by taking some damages or demurrages from the SSE, and for them then that delay is no delay thereafter. Now Income Tax Act, which is there for the purpose of collecting the tax on real income, now you are becoming or behaving like a super parent. And therefore, now after all, there is a concept of purposive construction. The object with which a particular legislation has been brought, the object was laudable, but that object is a collateral objective. The primary objective of the provisions of the Act is not to act as a fiscal instrument in the literal sense, that we have to be safeguarding the interest of the labor. That is not the dominant objective of the Income Tax Act. The objective of the Income Tax Act is to collect the tax on the real income. And because of the provisions like this, 43B or 36(1)(5)(a) or for that matter, several other provisions, the concept of real income, now that has been lost in the din. Otherwise, as a student of economics, we have read, and you also must have read, that a good taxation system is one where the difference between the real income and the taxable income is the minimum. Now the provisions like 36(1)(5)(a), if interpreted in the way in which the legislature seeks to read it, now that will throw the good canon or the canons of the taxation to the winds. So this rationalization of employees' contribution, though maybe the objective may be laudable, but then what is the rationale? I ask a question to myself. What is the rationale of not allowing this deduction forever? If an amount has not been paid on 15th day of the following month or has been paid on 16th day, then it will never be allowed. Now what can be the logic? Now I, as an assistant to the system, to the welfare state, I help the welfare state to discharge its welfare functions by deducting employees' contributions from their employees' wages. Now you treat it as my income. First of all, it doesn't have any trace of income. Now by creating a specific provision under section 2 clause 24 subclause 10, you treat it first of all income. Now under section 36(1)(5)(a), now as is sought to be clarified now you want to tax that amount received by me in trust from the employees as my income, and you would never allow me the deductions if there is a delay of 1 day. And what kind of a law? And that is why most of the high courts, even your Calcutta High Court, has decided this issue in favor of the taxpayer. Gujarat was of course against, Karnataka was against, but majority of the high courts were in favor of this interpretation. But then the board, as an obstinate or as a stubborn approach, issued one circular. Assessing officers following that circular. Most of the CIT appeals were also following that circular. At least in those jurisdictions where there is no authoritative pronouncement of the High Court in favor of the taxpayer. Now, in 43B, in 3615A, the board seeks to clarify for the removal of doubts, though the amendment has been made with effect from assessment in 21-22. But then the language which has been used for the removal of doubts, giving an impression as if it is a clarificatory. Otherwise, the law has always been understood like that. The litigation is not going to end. Now the question will whether this amendment or this clarification is prospective or retrospective. Ostensibly it is prospective, but then the attempt of the department would be, and for the courts also maybe in certain situations, no, even if the legislature sought to give effect prospectively, but then the intention is a curative, it is an attempt to cure a mischief which was never intended by the legislature. Therefore, it should be read to have the retrospective effect. But I have not been able to fathom the logic and rationale to act as a super parent and to tax on something which has got no trace of income. Now, regarding the other issue which you raised was about the search assessment. Now, search assessment till 1995 used to be in this manner, which is proposed in this finance bill, that if any adverse evidence has been found, the case of that assessment year used to be reopened on the basis of that belief that income has escaped assessment, income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. In 1995, the legislature found, no, we would assess for a block period of 10 years. And first appeal we will make to the tribunal. After 1.5 years, the tribunal was found not as a very efficient body as a first appellate authority. And therefore, again, CIT appeal came in between. In 2003, now that block assessment concept was done away with and it was replaced by the scheme of 153A to 153D assessment. Now, after 18 years, the legislature says in memorandum that even this system now is not free from litigation. And if that is your approach, I can say no, because there will always be litigations. I mean, when the courts interpret the law, they interpret the law having regard to the role of literal construction, having regard to the rule of purposive construction, and having employed the several other rules of interpretations. And therefore, we cannot say that since there has been litigation, therefore we should do away with this system. But anyway, now this is your prerogative. You are a sovereign. Because of your sovereign prerogative, now you can change. You have changed. You have proposed the change. But that in that process, kindly do not do violence to the established principles of law. Now, what have you done? That under section 148, even if you want to reopen the assessment, then that reason to believe which used to be there and which used to act as a check on the probable arbitrary action of the departmental authorities. Now that has been consigned, or that is proposed to be consigned into the dustbin of history. Now, reason to believe is a phrase, maybe a very short phrase, but it controls the action of the assessing officers so that the possibility of the arbitrary exercise of the reopening of the concluded assessment that can be minimized. And therefore, reason to believe is there under section 132. Reason to believe is there under section 147. Now that reason to believe now is proposed to be made the thing of the past, because the courts used to ask from the departmental authorities, what is the material with you on the basis of which you have sought to disturb the finality of an assessment? Whether, if this is the material, whether this material can be said to be having live nexus with the belief of escapement of income. So, if on the parameters, on the touchstone of the absence of reason to believe, if the action of the departmental authorities were not by the courts, after all, power to reopen a concluded assessment is an extraordinary power. The finality of assessment is something which the law has always attached to great sanctity. Therefore, if you are having, or you want to have a power to disturb the finality, then there must be the stepped up parameter for you, and that stepped up parameter was reason to believe. Now you are doing away with it. Now this is something, this is something, which can be said to be a quite violent proposal. And in fact, I tell you, in this finance bill, there are proposals, and more than the proposal, there are disposals. As my predecessor speaker, Mr. Sekar, also spoken about the obituaries which are being written for a couple of institutions by this finance bill. Income Tax Settlement Commission. Now, no even breathing space or time has been given to the settlement commissions. Now, you raised one issue, very pertinent issue. Now, what happened? Now, those SSEs who were contemplating to approach the settlement commissions before the conclusion of the assessment, now they've been left high and dry. No, I'm not saying that an SSE can claim to have any vested right to seek the settlement. But then an institution which has remained there for these number of years, now without any prior notice to the taxpayers to come clean. After all, you cannot develop a value system overnight. And therefore, to make settlement commission redundant, wound up, in no time, with the dawn of the 1st of February 2021, is something, to write obituary of the Income Tax Settlement Commission in this manner, in my respectful submissions and view, was something very hard. And even the pending applications, now kindly see the height, and there is a purpose. I will come to that purpose. Why has it been done? Now, Settlement Commission was, though, a creation under the Income Tax Act, but then it was not functioning under the superintendent's direction and control of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Now, creating the board of, or interim board, to be created and constituted by the Central Board of Direct Taxes, the board under the board. So this is the agenda, that to control, to regulate the interim boards by the higher this is, and similarly kindly see R, authority for advance ruling, which my predecessor speaker, learned speaker, also spoke. Authority for advance ruling, R. Now that R has been PAR, and that is proposed to be made BAR, Board of Advance Ruling. Now, how does it make any difference? If authority for advance ruling now could not discharge its functions expeditiously as was expected, now the Board of Advance Ruling will do. Board of Advance Ruling seems to have been proposed to be constituted for this reason, which was there in case of the Income Tax Settlement Commission. Now, this board will have 3 chief commissioners, and obviously they will function under the direction, superintendence and control of the CBDT. So where are we going? These are the larger issues. Whether we are allowed to destroy the institutions, that is the question which has to be pondered over by all of us. Never before kind of these budget proposals may have cheered the market, and the market is still thumping and jumping. Yesterday 600, today 400. But then whether it has cheered, at least not to the chartered accountants. Now you are doing away with, or not doing away with, but then you are increasing the threshold from 5 crores to 10 crores, even before the expiry of 1 year. Now, whether the audit is done in a case of cash transactions only, whether that is the objective of the tax audit. No, the objective of the tax audit, apart from those cash transactions, is to ask the tax auditors to give valuable input, information, details, and help to the tax assessments. 41(1), that if there is any cessation of any liability in respect of which an expense for which the deduction has been claimed, if that has been remitted, the chartered accountants, tax auditors have to report. 43(b), statutory due, if not paid up to the due date of filing of return. Now, even those concerns which have got 100% banking transactions, whether 43(b) disalliances were not there, 41(1) transactions are not there, whether 45 subsection 2 conversion of a capital asset into stock in trade is not there, whether section 43CA or section 50C, where the consideration received as a result of transfer of immovable property is less than the stamp duty value, then the stamp duty value is to be taken as the considerations received or accruing. Now, whether it is not there, whether the computation of depreciation which is allowable, whether it is not there in case of the concern, there are transactions through the banking channel only. So, the role of auditor or the role of auditor for that matter is not only, I do not know, what kind of briefing or the background with which, the CBDT or the persons who are in the legislation wing are briefed. Purpose of audit is to assist with the assessment by collating, collecting, presenting, such vital informations to the tax department, which helps them making assessment and raising demand. Under section 143(1), now one of the clauses is that any expenditure which is disallowable on the basis of the audit report under section 44AB, the CPC can make adjustment. Now you are adding one more limb to that, income reported by the tax auditors, and that adjustment can be made under section 143(1). So the tax auditors are giving the yeoman service, and then on one fine morning last year you did from 1 crore to 5 crore because the digital transactions are there. Now you say digital transactions threshold is I'm sorry. Tribunal faceless. Now you have made assessing officers faceless, you have made first appeal faceless, you have made penalty faceless, you have made 263 faceless. Now you are proposing to make income tax appellate tribunal also faceless. So why don't you change the name of this act from the Income Tax Act as the Faceless Income Tax Act? Now we understand your concern for bringing transparency, efficiency, and accountability, because these three words now have found favor from the legislature successively in last few finance bills and acts. So in order to impart greater transparency, efficiency, and accountability, now you propose to make even the tribunal faceless. Now when the first appellate authority was made faceless, we somehow convinced ourselves that we'll submit submissions, we'll file the paper book, we will do the chain indexing and the written submissions paper book in such a manner that by breaking his head, that Commissioner Appeal would understand, and in case he does not understand or partially understand, then we have got the tribunal to set the wrongs right. Now even that final fact finding body, you say the facts found by the tribunal are final, and only limited issue which is open before the tribunal under section 260 capital is substantial question of law. Now even we want to make that final fact finding body as faceless. Paper books are running in 1,000 pages. We do not have good connectivities. Now we all along had been witnessing, it was a period of pandemic. We all were somehow bearing with it, but it doesn't. And then we have got the important principle of natural justice. The justice should not only be done, it should appear to be done. Now, when can it be said the justice should appear to be done? When it is done, in public, before the public. It is amenable to be seen by public. Now, by sitting, by breaking head in the closed corridor, now you are asking the tribunal, which is the final fact finding body. Now, how much time then the higher constitutional courts take now is everybody's guess. Before Honorable Calcutta High Court, you can have the statistics that even the tax bench doesn't function. In Calcutta High Court for the complete week. And in such a situation, when there may not be or there may be miscarriage of justice because of the facelessness character of the proceedings before the tribunal, there will be, appeals in abundance before the High Court to thresh out the facts. They will forget the substantial question of law. Because after all, if there is some factual finding recorded by the tribunal, dehoards the evidence which is there on record, then that constitutes substantial question of law. High Court will have to show indulgence. Now you imagine the enormity of the cases before the High Court. So I have not been able to fathom. I have not been able to appreciate. And then you want to show magnanimity by showing concern to senior citizen. But then, or by showing the concern for the real estate developer for their, built up inventory because of the pandemic. But then, what kind of provisions you propose in case of senior citizen? That you forgot about the definition of senior citizen. 60 years you forgot. Now you say 75 years for this purpose. 75 years or more during the previous year. Then he should have only pension income. Or at best he can have interest income. But then if he has got interest income, it should be from the same bank in which he receives pension. Now, in what manner are you, staggering the relief? Then the banks will be specified by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Then this person, senior citizen, who cannot file his return, he is required to file a declaration giving such particulars as may be there. So if he can file declaration, he can file the return also. And once the declaration will come, then the bank will act as a tax returns prepare, TRP, and will compute the tax liability, will give the deduction of chapter 6A, then give the rebate under section 87A, and then the senior citizen can sit back, relaxed at home, is not required to file return. But then if there is some refund which is to come to the senior citizen, now he will have to file the return of income. He cannot, because after all, if he doesn't file the return, in case he happens to get the refund from the bank or from the income tax department, then he's obliged to file the return. So, in what manner, if you want to be sensitive to the senior citizen, then be reasonable. Now, in case of the real estate developer, now you want to enhance the tolerance range from 10% to 20%. That if you are a real estate developer transferring land or building for a consideration which is less than the stamp duty value, section 43C says that the stamp duty value shall be deemed to full value of consideration. Then there is a proviso which says that if the stamp duty value is not more than 10% of the actual consideration, then the actual consideration shall be deemed to be the full consideration. Now the 10% is sought to be done 20%. But then kindly see the conditions. That it should be in respect of a transfer of a residential unit only. Kindly see. Then that transfer should take place between 12th of November. I do not know whether 12th of November was Deepavali or what was the national occasion. 12th of November has been 12th of November 2020 to 30th June 2021. Then it should be by way of the original allotment. With these many riders, and there is one more rider, kindly. And the consideration received, should not be more than 2 crores of rupees. So the fetters after fetters, the restrictions after restrictions, the conditions after conditions, ifs after buts, and buts after ifs. There has to, so you want to show a magnanimity, but then that magnanimity is not exhibited in the letter nor in spirit. So I do not know, in what directions we are going. Settlement commission has gone. Reduction in time limit for completing of assessment, of course. Now, reduction in the time limit for revision of return or filing of the belated return. The return can be filed belatedly, or if the return has already been filed and can be revised before the end of the assessment year or before the assessment whichever is earlier. That is what the law is under 139.4 or 139.5. Now, government says thumping its back or thumping its chest, in whatever manner you want to say, oh, we had become technologically very advanced. Yes, they have become. But then, therefore, they say that end of the assessment year is not, it's somewhat longer period. 3 months prior to the end of the assessment year is the time limit within which either the return which has not been filed can be filed, or if filed can be revised. 153 assessment for assessment year 21-22 and onwards. Now, for which the time limit was 12 months from the end of the assessment year. now has been made 9 months. 143.2 time limit, which is there 6 months from the end of the financial year, if the return is furnished, now is proposed to be contracted by 3 months. 153A and 153C, as I had dealt with. Now, in respect of the search initiated on or after 31st March 2021 or requisition. Now, I mean, those procedures which have withstood the test of time from 2003, I mean, they will no longer be available. And 148. Now, on the basis of information, now kindly see, on the basis of information flagged as a result of the risk management strategy, and on the basis of the audit objection, final audit objection of the Controller and Auditor General, by taking the prior approval of the specified authority, approval, that satisfaction word which was there under section 151, now that has again been given the quietus or the quietus burial. There is a lot of difference between the satisfaction and approval. Satisfaction, because section 151 used to express that if those authorities were satisfied on the reasons recorded by the assessing officer, that it is a fit case for the issue of notice under section 148. Now, approval has got some sort of administrative approval, which may or may not be with the reasons. Whereas satisfaction, though, was the subjective satisfaction under section 151. The courts have said that subjective satisfaction should be dependent upon the objective considerations, and those objective considerations must come on record. I remember in 1987, by the Direct Tax Laws Amendment Act, an attempt was made by the legislature to do away with this phrase or reason to believe. And instead of this reason to believe, the legislature substituted the word when the assessing officer is of the opinion. There were massive protests, of course, not like the farmers' protests, but then there were representations, I mean, from various quarters, various professional bodies, various business organizations, chambers, commerce, industry. And the pressure was, and that provision was to come into effect from 1st of April 1989. The government was so much pressurized that in January 89 itself, the Amendment Act was brought, restoring the old positions of reason to believe. A reason to believe ही तो है जो act that acts as a check and balance on the possibility of an arbitrary exercise of that power. Now, the action of reopening of a concluded assessment is amenable to be reviewed on the barometer, on the touchstone, on the parameters of reason to believe now. And then after 4 years, under the existing first proviso to section 147, if your original assessment has been made under section 143.3. Now, after 4 years, an assessing officer wants to reopen an assessment, then that reassessment could be possible if there is a failure on the part of the assessee to disclose material facts fully and truly. Now, that is, I tried to find, I mean, such kind of provision in the proposed amendment. I could not find. If you find some, kindly let me know. So then, in normal case, 3 years. In abnormal case, beyond 3 to 10 years. I mean, what is the parameter of abnormality? That if there is information that income chargeable to taxes escaped assessment is more than 50 lakhs of rupees, based upon the information flagged. I mean, now, in order to hide the inefficiency of those who are responsible to show efficiency, you are doing violence to the established principles of law. That is something which irks. Then comes advanced tax installment. I can understand that unless you know about the dividend. I mean, how can you be made to pay, I mean, advance tax qua that dividend? So, I mean, this is good. 1023C, charitable trust and institutions are under tremendous pressure. But then before I come to the pressure, let me release some pressure. That 1023C, 3IAD and 3IAE, those unregistered, unapproved educational institutions and universities, hospitals and medical institutions exist solely for educational purpose or solely for I mean for medical purpose, not for the purpose of profit. If their annual average receipts are not more than what is prescribed, and the prescription was there under Rule 2 BC, 1 crore. Now, memorandum says some representations have come. It's good that the representations, when come, are received also in a positive manner. This is good. This is good indication. So representations were reportedly received by the board or by those who were responsible. And then after taking into account the representations, the limit of 1 crore was found to be somewhat on the lower side, and therefore legislature, by making amendment or proposed amendment in the act itself, that rule now will be the thing of the past. Therefore, in future, if you want to increase that 5 crores to 10 crores, depending upon these kind of representation which happen to receive, which you claim now you have received, and on that basis you're acting upon, then you will have to go to the parliament to make amendment. Because had it been through the Rule 2 BC, then the board could have done it. But then there is one more amendment which has been made in 1023C, 3IAD and 3IAE, is to nullify the decision of the Karnataka High Court in Children's Education Society. In that decision, the Karnataka High Court said that the limit of 1 crore will have to be seen in respect of each educational institution or in case of each medical institution. Now, it is proposed to be provided that the limit of 5 crores will be seen by aggregating the receipts of all educational institutions being run by the trust. So this is also the proposed amendment. So I was talking about the pressure which is there on charitable trust and institutions. The first pressure, and which is sought to be released by making the proposed amendment by the legislature, is that you claim corpus donation. We claim because there is a provision exempt, and any voluntary contributions received with the direction that it shall not form part of the income is called the corpus donations, 11(1)(d) or the third proviso to section 1023C. But the memorandum says that such corpus donations, when it comes to the application, it is applied, and for the purpose of determining the 85%, I mean, that application is taken into account, and therefore we'll stop this. We cannot allow you to take the double advantage. Therefore, the amendment is proposed that corpus donations will have to be kept in one or more forms or modes of investment under section 11 subsection 5. And in case you happen to apply the corpus donations, that application will not be part of that application of 85%. Once after applying it out of that corpus donation, when you redeposit it in the bank account, then the amount which you redeposit, that will be treated as application, and that too out of your current year's income is important. The second thing, that when you borrow as a trust or institution, and then you apply out of those borrowed funds, you treat that application as part of the 85% application. Then the proposed amendment is that no, we will not allow you. When you borrow, then application out of that borrowal will not be treated as application. This will be treated as application in the year when you repay that loan or part of the loan out of your current year's income, to the extent of that amount which you repay. And the third thing now which is proposed in this Finance Bill 2021 in respect of the charitable trust and institutions is that if there is excessive applications in any year, and that excessive application, now because of the Supreme Court decision, now is available to be set off against the future income, now that will not be allowed. Because though there was no such law in explicit terms earlier, but then the court, Supreme Court, now held that it is allowable to be set off. But then the decisions, as my predecessor, learned speaker Mr. Sekar said, that the decisions rendered by the courts, sometimes in favor of the taxpayers, sometimes rendered in favor of taxpayers, most of the times are undone. And then we have got, kindly minded, we probably may have missed and forgotten, there is section 12AB, which was introduced by Finance Act 2020. But because of the pandemic situations, because of amendment made into an act of interregnum period, the operation of 12AB was deferred. All trust and institutions will have to seek re-registration under section 12AB. So trust, charitable trust and institutions are under severe strain. They are being closely watched, monitored, because it has been the thinking of the government that this charitable trust and institutions probably either may not be doing the real charitable activity. I remember in Queen's Educational Society's decision in Supreme Court, I had an occasion to argue that matter before my Lord Justice T.S. Thakur, as he then was, not as the Chief Justice, was first Puneja, and then my Lord Justice Rohington Nariman. And the observations came from by the senior judge. I mean, what kind of charity, I mean, these schools are doing? We forget that to provide education and medical is the role and responsibility of the state. Therefore, the state, by saying that our resources are not enough, therefore those private persons who can come and then do and undertake these activities, which are essentially the responsibility of the state, then we will finance you. We will finance you by not charging the tax. So that charity, which is normally understood charity in that sense, and may not be there. But then if Income Tax Act section 2 clause 15 now provides the specific definition of charity with no fetter except one proviso, which is not applicable in case of education or medical relief, then that education or medical relief will have to be understood. Even if I am running an educational institutions with air-conditioned classes for the students, why do you think, I remember in one of the cases I had an occasion to argue before the tribunal, I said, why do you carry this kind of an impression that the charity can be done in Fateh Hall only? Now, if I am doing charity, running education, which is considered as a charitable object under section 2 clause 15, now merely because I am doing that charitable activity with some pomp and show, that doesn't lose the character of that activity. I mean, away from the charity. So, but charitable institutions are under deep stress, which is evident by, series of proposed amendments. And therefore, now, Chhaparia sir, there are several points, but I think if there are questions, because unless the seminars are made interactive, webinars are made interactive, because recently I was in Calcutta in ITC in regional conference, there also the time was not, for questions and answers. I think, no webinar, seminar can be said to be useful unless there are questions and unless there are answers. So if yes, so are there questions?
There was one question from one of the audiences.
In only one question?
Yeah, just one question has been received.
Oh, okay, so let me deal with more.
Yeah.
Let me deal with more issues like Dispute Resolution Committee.
Okay.
DRC. The experience of DRP is there before our eyes. Dispute Resolution Panel. That is not very soothing. For a number of years, the Dispute Resolution Panel being manned by 3 senior principal commissioners. The kind of orders used to be passed by the DRP, most of them used to be very laconic, one-liner, non-speaking, cryptic, and which when appealed against, before the tribunal, would set aside such kind of orders. So now we have got DRC. Now what is the DRC? And kindly see whether it can be of any use or of any help. It says that if the amount of additional disallowance is not more than rupees 10 lakhs, what is the tax impact on 10 lakhs? For that, you say the small and medium SSEs will stand benefited from this DRC, Dispute Resolution Committee. Your return income should not be more than 50 lakhs. Your proposed variation or assessment or additions or disallowance should not be more than 10 lakhs. But we have already got section 270 capital AA. Now, which gives power to the assessing officer to reduce or waive the penalty and not to initiate prosecution. If you do not file an appeal against the additions made, you pay the taxes within 30 days. It is already there in the, and if there is no penalty initiation in respect of underreported income as a consequence of misreporting of income, but of course. But here, before the DRC, there is nothing which is evident from the present language. You file appeal, still you can approach to DRC. You may not pay the tax, you can still approach the DRC. But then for what? 10 lakhs of rupees. If you forget 115 BBE, where the tax rate is as high as 77 or 78%, now most of the cases on 10 lakhs rupees, the tax liability may be 3,30,000, 3,50,000 rupees, not more than it. What kind of purpose? And then this assessment should not be as a result of search or requisition. Now, there is one more important thing which I forgot in case of the search assessment. Now, in respect of any other case, there has to be information available with the assessing officer even to reopen assessment of 3 years, which the legislature in the proposed scheme says that the normal case. But in case of the search, in case of requisition under 132A, and in case of survey, kindly mind it, in case of survey also, preceding 3 assessment years will always be deemed that there is information available to the assessing officer that the income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. So the moment there is a survey, there will invariably be reopening of 3 years assessment, if we go by the language of the memorandum. Whether there is any information, or like in case of a search under section 132, for 153A, there used to be a mandatory issue of notice for preceding 6 years. Now, in case of search or requisition or survey, there will be mandatory issuance of notice under section 148 for preceding 3 years. If the time limit for taking up the case in scrutiny in 143(2) is there, which will not be there, because now 143(2) time limit is proposed to be reduced to 3 months. Now, if you remember, Finance Act 2012 brought one amendment in section 149 by inserting clause C that if there is some foreign asset, then the time limit will be for 16 years, not 6 years. Now, that is not there now. This is not there. It's not there now. The 16 years concept in respect of the foreign assets, maybe because of the introduction of the Black Money Act. But then, even after the Black Money Act, the attempt of the department is to rope in even those assets abroad which existed prior to the introduction of the Black Money Act. So, friends, my predecessor friend has spoken about most of the issues, but then the issues on which I found, my view, because I do not speak, on that micro aspect as to what is the provision, but then I do attempt to have a blend of micro and macro aspects, and therefore, one question from Aditya Surana ji is quite lengthy. Goodwill is clarified not to be included in definition of block of assets for depreciation. The memo speaks about such goodwill being not existent in books of account, books of the seller, and that the cost of goodwill is actually nil. Also, that goodwill is not the appraisal asset. Applying this rationale, even contracts to provide services, that is right to provide services, commercial right which is acquired with a business may also not be considered as a depreciable asset. So does it mean only those rights or goodwill which is capitalized in the seller's books can be recognized by buyer and be subject to depreciation? Yes, of course. Because they say that if you acquire goodwill for a cost, then also it is not liable because they say the goodwill, like land, does not get depreciated. Goodwill either will be appreciated or will not be depreciated. Probably they have forgotten the instance of Kingfisher. I mean, goodwill. You cannot say as a matter of thumb rule that goodwill will always be appreciated or would not depreciate. That depends upon the facts and circumstances. But anyway, the legislature seems to take this stand that the goodwill, unless you incur a cost for the acquisition of goodwill, will not be treated as goodwill. You cannot create goodwill out of your self generations and then claim depreciation, or when you reorganize and you pay excessive amount out of that reorganizations, then also the difference cannot be said to be goodwill. Or even if you call it goodwill, but then there will not be any depreciation. That is what I mean, the mandate of the law, which is proposed to be there by making the wholesale amendment to section 2, clause 11, by making amendment to section 32, subsection 1, explanation 3 to section 32, and then making amendment to section 50, then 48, then 55. I mean, a whole lots of amendments for, and you now you see this Smurf's decision of the Supreme Court in 348 ITR and 302 came how many years back? You took how many years to really appreciate the goodwill does not appreciate? We have got 440 ITR. In 1 year, as I said, the 6 ITRs come. 348 52 or 40 92 divided by 6. 15 years have gone. Much water has flown in Ganga in all these 15 years. Now, all of a sudden you wake up and then find, no, we cannot allow the depreciation on goodwill. GST audit is to be done. That I cannot say because I do not deal in audits. Chhaparia ji and team views. Many thanks for very nice. Okay. This is a compliment to Chhaparia sir. Search cases are covered at 148. Will the same be faceless? Yes, they will be faceless because the assessment, the genesis of 148 may be as a result of search, but then at the end of the day, it will be the assessment under section 148. But then nothing can be ruled out. If you remember, in Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, there are 2 rates. I raised this issue in Calcutta recently on 20th of January when I was there in physical regional conference. In Vivad Se Vishwas, now in case of search, if the demand is as a result of the search assessment, there is 125% has to be paid. Then came question number 70 in board circular dated 4th of December 2020. And the board has got the audacity to clarify that even if your assessment is under section 143.3 or 148, if the genesis of the addition is a search on somebody on this earth under section 132, that will be treated as a demand result, as a demand arising as a result of search, and we will take 125%. And department is issuing VSVS certificate form number 3 with 125%. Somebody will have to challenge. Somebody will have to knock at the door of the High Court. I mean, to see the reason. I mean, because I mean, whenever you bring out some scheme of exemption, deductions, rebates, relief, settlement, I mean, you behave in a manner as if you are doling out something. That is something, I mean, which is not conducive. So friends, now it is almost 6. I mean, if there are questions, then I would take it. Thank you Naveen ji, thank you Chhaparia ji, thank you Sarvut sir, and my other friends in Kolkata. And I tell you, I remain in Kolkata for 2 days in regional conference physically. I came out after a long time. I mean, to be standing before the gathering after the pandemic. It was a wonderful experience to be in Calcutta. I have got some, I mean, earlier birth linkage with Calcutta, and I like Calcutta very much. is a city of joy, and this is city of more joy for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh ji.
It's not the city of
Thank you, Dr. Rakesh Gupta. A wonderful with 45-50 minute session by you, sir. In this short time, I mean, you clarified section 148 that new provisions are not giving a fresh period of life to the department officers. You raised an issue that the proposed amendment in section 36(1) clause small 5a may be again prone to litigation because they are starting the proposed amendment with the use of words like for the removal of doubts. Then again, you stated that the proposed section 48, the new section 148 can again open some more powers to the assessing officer because the earlier reason to believe was causing a restriction on the action of the assessing officers. Sir, you clarified the point that unless some new, the Income Tax Settlement Commission has known fresh applications and one income tax settlement applications can be filed after first wave unless something new comes up. Then
Nothing will come. Chhaparia sir, nothing will come. The settlement commission itself has been unsettled.
okay. Then, sir, you discussed about the search provisions in detail that the present search provisions, the proposed search provisions are similar to 1995 provisions. And then you raised a very interesting issue that even in case of a survey, there will be a compulsory reopening under section 148 for 3 years, which was perhaps overlooked by many professionals when they were reading the fine prints of the finance bill. Sir, you clarified that the belated return, revised return time limit has been reduced by 3 months. The 143(2) time limit has been for issuing notice. The time limit has been reduced by 3 months, so all notice have to be issued within June. Sir, you gave a very great insights into the charitable trust provisions. The carry forward of excess application cannot be allowed now. The loan taken and repayment part, you clarified that. The corpus donation issue, other issues you were clarified. You also said that, sir, that the dispute resolution mechanism may not be of much practical significance going by your experience with the DRC and the fact that it is applicable only where the proposed addition is only up to 10 lakhs. Sir, we are really thankful for the way you have covered the entire budget fine prints into the small time which was allotted to you. With this, I thank you again and give the and request Naveen Khemka, the organizers, to conclude the seminar today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chhaparia ji. Friends, as we have seen that today's budget, yesterday's budget, when our FM moved from Bhai Khata to tab, emphasizing that our economy is also moving to digitization, wherein all the records, assessments which were practical, physical, needs to get digitized. Our assessments were faceless, appeals were faceless. We also now seeing the tribunals to be faceless. We have heard all the speakers today in length. But I found out or concluded that the budget is in the right map to lead our country to a positive side. We were a developing country and we were hit at large due to the pandemic. But the roadmap through which the budget is being placed is in the right direction. There will be plus and minuses, but we take positive things out of it. That was my partake from this outlook. Experts are there to explain the integrities and integrities. I would just like to have a concluding remarks from you, Chhaparia ji, and then we can close the session. Regarding the budget, how we would feel about the budget.
Naveen, you want me to speak?
Yeah, just for 2 minutes, sir. Just your overview on the total budget scene, that how you look forward towards this budget, that whether it's good, bad, or what's your key inputs, sir, for other audiences.
Sir, I would say, Ravin, I would say only one thing which Dr. Rakesh Gupta was telling about. Should we rename the name of the Income Tax Act and make it a faceless Income Tax Act? I mean, and I tell you, I find a lot of young practitioners who are there in this presentation today. So there will be a good scope for the young practitioners because one has to clearly adopt themselves with the information technology. And coming to the good part of it or bad part of it, I think it has been discussed at length by the earlier speakers. So I don't want to repeat the same thing. Time is short. It's already 6, and I find that already 15 participants have already exited from the today's session. So let us not extend the session. With this, I complete my session today.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of Views Exchange and all the participants, I thank Rakesh Gupta ji for sparing the time. I also thank CA K.K.Chhaparia ji for chairing this session, moderating all the speakers and taking forward and concluding it. I would request Sarojit Swaikar to please offer a hearty vote of thanks and then we can conclude it. Saroji, you are muted.
Naveen ji, thank you very much.
Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you, Saroji.
Respected Gupta ji and Chhaparia ji and other friends, it's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of Views Exchange Study Circle EIRC and the entire members of Views Exchange, entire fraternity of CAs present here together, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers for coming out of their busy schedule and gracing the occasion and sharing with us their findings and opinions today on this Union Budget session. Today, we had the opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this is definitely encouraging us in our future. A big thank you to Dr. Mukerjee for his efforts towards this budget speech, who is not right now with us. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to Dr. Gupta ji for his detailed explanation on this budget. Further, we are grateful to Mr. K.R.Sekar for his detailed speech today, who has already left. I may like to express my sincere thanks to all the speakers for giving an excellent coverage and providing us updation at all levels. We are all inspired by your great efforts and words. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to Mr. Naveen Khemka, our convener, for his support and guidance he has extended to all of us at this budget session. A big thank you to Chhaparia for his efforts towards chairing the session today and giving valued opinion during his budget session. I also thank to all the members present and attending this session for giving a patient hearing. Friends, once again, I want to state that we are all most grateful to all speakers on this platform. We thank you for being with us this evening. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you to sir, particularly thank you to Chhaparia ji sir for nice deliberation and the coordinating. And the budget magazine was very nice. Thanks to Chhaparia ji.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks to all. Thanks.